Why do we fear the dark void inside our own minds? Before the beginning, there was only a vast, formless emptiness, an echo of our deepest dread. Then, a spark of awareness stirred over those silent, chaotic waters. A voice commanded light to break the gloom, and consciousness was born. Seeing this brilliance as good, the Creator split the light from the dark. He named the light day, and the darkness night, marking the first cycle of time. Then came a new decree, to place a great dome amidst the wild depths, separating the waters above from the waters below. And so it happened. This vast boundary took shape, parting the oceans below from the misty heavens above. He called this protective barrier the sky, a ceiling for the new world. Evening fell, and morning brought the second day. The Creator spoke again, commanding the restless waters beneath the sky to pull back into one place so dry ground could finally emerge. Solid ground materialized. He named the dry land Earth, while the massive pooled waters became the seas. Watching this new structure take form, he saw that it was good. Then he commanded the barren ground to burst with life-sprouting green shoots, wild plants carrying seeds, and trees heavy with fruit, each holding the potential for its own future. Immediately, the earth responded. Rich vegetation crept across the landscape, and orchards grew, their seeds locked inside their sweet flesh, ready to propagate life. He saw that this blossoming life was good, and with the setting sun, the third day ended. Next, the Creator called for luminous beacons to hang in the high heavens. They would separate the daylight from the dark, serving as celestial markers to measure seasons, days, and passing years, casting a steady, guiding glow upon the world below. It was done. 2 massive beacons took their places, the brilliant sun to govern the daytime, and the silver moon to rule the quiet night. Beside them, he scattered the stars. He placed these cosmic guides in the sky to illuminate the earth, govern the hours, and draw a clear boundary between light and shadow. It was a beautiful design. Twilight fell, and the 4th day drew to a close. Then came a call to the depths. He commanded the oceans to teem with swarming life, and birds to fly freely across the wide, open expanses of the sky. So the leviathans of the deep were born, along with countless sliding, swimming creatures that filled the seas and every feathered wing that caught the wind. Looking upon them, he saw it was good. Giving them his blessing, he urged them to multiply, to fill the deep oceans, and let the birds crowd the land. Night came and morning marked the 5th day. Next, the soil itself was told to bring forth life, herds of cattle, crawling insects, and wild predators. It happened instantly. The land grew heavy with beasts of every shape and size, each reproducing according to its own nature, filling the forests and plains. And he saw that it was good. Then a profound shift occurred. The Creator said, "Let us shape mankind in our own image, reflecting our divine nature, to hold stewardship over the sea, the sky, the cattle, and every crawling creature." Thus, humanity was fashioned, carved in the very likeness of the divine, a mirroring spark of consciousness, set to walk the earth. He made them male and female, and gave them his blessing. He spoke to them directly, saying, "Be fruitful, populate the world, and cultivate its wild forces. Take responsibility and steward the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that moves across the land. Look around you. I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the face of this earth, and every tree that yields seeded fruit to be your food. And to every wild beast, every bird flying in the sky, and every creature crawling upon the ground, to everything that holds the spark of life, I have given the green herbs for sustenance." And so it was. The Creator gazed at the whole of his work, and indeed it was deeply good. With that, evening fell, and the sixth day concluded. The vast cosmos and everything in it was finally complete. On the seventh day, the Creator finished his great design, stepping back to rest from the immense labor of bringing life into being. He blessed this seventh day and made it holy, a quiet space of rest after the grand act of creation. This is the sacred lineage of the sky and the earth. In those early days, before any green shrub had taken root in the soil, and before any wild herb had sprouted from the ground, the world waited in quiet potential. No rain had yet fallen, and no human was there to cultivate the soil. Instead, a gentle, mysterious mist rose from the deep, damp earth, watering the silent surface of the land. Then the Creator shaped man from the fragile dust of the earth, breathing the breath of life directly into his nostrils, turning him into a living soul. In the east he planted Eden, placing the man in this paradise. From the soil grew trees of magnificent beauty, bearing delicious fruit. At the very center of this sanctuary stood two mysterious trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river went out from Eden to water the garden, eventually branching into four great sweeping waterways. The first river, the Pishon, wound through the rich land of Havilah, a place of pure gold, rare resins, and precious onyx. The second river was named the Gihon, carving its path through the ancient landscape. It flowed around the entire land of Cush. The third river, the Tigris, rushed eastward toward Assyria, while the fourth was the mighty Euphrates rivers, anchoring this paradise to the physical world. The Creator settled the man in Eden to cultivate and guard this sanctuary. But he issued a strict boundary. You are free to eat from almost any tree in this garden, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You must never eat from it, for the moment you eat of it, you will surely die. Then, looking at the solitary figure, the Creator noted, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a companion suitable for him." From the soil he shaped every wild beast and every bird of the air, bringing them to the man to see what names he would choose for them. Whatever the man called each living creature, that became its permanent identity. He named the livestock, the birds, and the wild beasts. But among them all he found no true companion to share his inner world. So the Creator sent a profound, heavy sleep over the man. While he drifted in unconsciousness, he took one of his ribs and sealed the skin back over the space. From that rib he fashioned a woman and led her to the man. Looking at her, he gasped, "Finally, this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she came out of man." This is why a man leaves his family to unite with his wife, the two becoming one flesh. They stood there, completely naked, but felt no shadow of shame or self-consciousness. But a creature of cold intellect, the serpent more cunning than any beast, whispered to the woman, "Did the Creator really say you cannot eat from any tree in this paradise?" She replied to the serpent, "We are allowed to eat the fruit from the trees in the garden. But as for the fruit of the tree standing right in the center, God warned us not to eat it, or even touch it, otherwise we will die." But the serpent hissed back, "You will not die. He knows that the moment you taste it, your eyes will fly open and you will become like gods, defining good and evil for yourselves." She looked at the tree. It seemed delicious, incredibly beautiful to the eye, and promised a thrilling new perspective. Tempted by the promise of wisdom, she reached out, took the fruit, and ate. She handed some to her husband, and he ate too. Instantly, their eyes were opened. A cold wave of self-awareness hit them. They realized they were naked. Panic setting in, they stitched fig leaves together to cover themselves. Then, as the cool evening breeze swept through the trees, they heard the sound of the Creator walking. Terrified, they shrank back, hiding from his presence deep among the shadows of the garden trees. The Creator called out, asking, "Where are you?" The man answered from the darkness, "I heard your footsteps in the garden, and I was terrified because of my nakedness, so I hid myself away." He asked, "Who told you that you were naked? Did you eat from the forbidden tree?" That same primordial fear of exposure still haunts our modern souls. What if our deepest anxieties began with a finger pointed in the dark? The man blamed the companion God gave him, and she in turn blamed the snake. Confronted by the divine, both confessed to eating, but neither took blame. So the Creator spoke to the serpent. For this deception it was cursed above every creature, marked as the lowest beast of the field. Doomed to crawl in the dust forever, a timeless war began. Eternal hostility between the serpent's offspring and the woman's descendants. An endless struggle where humanity crushes the deceiver's head while it strikes at our very heels. To the woman, a legacy of labor and pain was born. The sacred act of bringing forth new life became tied to suffering, bound to a complex struggle of desire and dominance between partners. And to Adam, who listened to his wife rather than the divine law, the very earth was cursed. The soil that once nourished him freely became a stubborn adversary. Life became a grueling struggle against thorns and thistles. Survival would now require bitter toil, and the sweat of his brow a relentless battle to feed himself from the dirt until his final breath. Formed from the earth, he was destined to return to it. Yet, in the face of death, Adam named his companion Eve, celebrating her as the mother of all living souls. To cover their shame, God clothed them in animal skins, the first sacrifice. But a chilling truth remained. Humanity had become like the divine now, burdened with the heavy knowledge of good and evil. To prevent them from reaching for the tree of life and living forever in their broken state, God exiled them. They were cast out of Eden, sent to till the soil from which they came. Banished into the wilderness, the gateway back was sealed. Guarding the path to immortality were terrifying heavenly guardians and a spinning sword of fire blocking any hope of return. In exile, Eve gave birth to Cain, believing she had brought forth a man with God's help. Then came Abel. One brother became a shepherd tending his flocks. Cain, meanwhile, worked the soil. In time, both brothers brought offerings to the Lord, Cain offering the harvest of his fields, and Abel presenting the very best firstborn of his flock as a sacred sacrifice. The Creator looked with favor on Abel's offering, but rejected Cain's. This sparked a deep, burning resentment in Cain, his face darkening with jealousy and anger. God asked him, "Why are you so angry? Why this dark expression? If you do right, will you not be accepted? But if you choose poorly, sin is crouching at your door, waiting to control you. Yet you must master it." Cain spoke to his brother Abel, leading him out into the open country. There, isolated in the quiet fields, Cain turned on his brother and murdered him. When God asked where Abel was, Cain lied, asking if he was his brother's keeper. But the truth could not be hidden. The voice of Abel's spilled blood was screaming out from the very earth. Now Cain was cursed by the soil that had swallowed his brother's blood. The land would refuse to yield its strength to him, leaving his hands empty and his efforts futile. He was condemned to wander as a restless fugitive. Overwhelmed, Cain cried out to God, declaring his punishment too heavy to endure. "You have banished me from this land and hidden your face from me. As an unprotected wanderer on this earth, I am terrified that whoever finds me will kill me to avenge Abel." But God decreed that anyone who killed Cain would face a sevenfold vengeance. The Creator placed a mysterious mark on him to protect him from being slain by others. Leaving the divine presence, Cain settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. There his wife bore Enoch, and Cain built a city, naming it after his son to cement his legacy. The family lineage continued through Irad Mehujael and Methushael, eventually producing Lamech. He became the first to take two wives, marrying Ada and Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, the pioneer of nomadic herding, and Jubal, who became the ancestor of all who play stringed instruments and pipes. Zillah bore Tubal-Cain, the first blacksmith who forged tools from bronze and iron. His sister was Naamah. One day Lamech called his wife together, demanding they listen closely. "I killed a man for wounding me," he boasted. "If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech will be avenged 77 times. In time, Adam and Eve had another son, naming him Seth, a replacement for the murdered Abel. Seth too became a father, naming his own son Enoch, continuing the fragile lineage. It was then that people began to call upon the Lord. This is the written history of Adam's line, originating from the day God created humanity in the divine image. He created them male and female, blessing them and naming them human on the day of their creation. When Adam was 130, he had a son in his own likeness, named Seth. Adam lived another 800 years, fathering many more children. Adam lived 930 years before he died. Seth, at 105, had Enoch living another 807 years with his family. Seth died at 912. Enoch reached 90, fathering Kenan, and lived 815 more years, raising many sons and daughters. Enoch died at 905. Kenan lived 70 years, fathered Mahalalel, and survived another 840 years, growing his household. Kenan died at 910. Mahalalel lived 65 years, fathered Jared, and lived 830 more years with his offspring. Mahalalel died at 895. Jared reached 162, fathered Enoch, and lived 800 more years, expanding his family. Jared died at 962. Enoch lived 65 years, fathered Methuselah, and then walked in close fellowship with God for another 300 years. Enoch lived 365 years. Because he walked with God, he suddenly vanished. God simply took him. Methuselah reached 187, fathering Lamech. Methuselah lived 782 years after Lamech's birth. He died at 969. Lamech lived 182 years, then fathered a son. He named him Noah, hoping he would bring relief from their painful labor and the heavy burden of the cursed soil they worked daily. Lamech lived 595 years after Noah's birth, dying at 777. When Noah was 500, he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. As humanity multiplied across the earth, daughters were born. The sons of God looked upon these daughters of men, captivated by their striking beauty. They claimed any women they chose. Seeing this, the Lord declared his spirit would not tolerate humanity's corruption forever, setting a limit of 120 years. During those ancient days, mysterious giants walked the earth. This occurred when divine beings coupled with human women, producing legendary, powerful children. These were the mythic heroes of old. But God saw how deep human corruption had grown, witnessing that every human thought and desire had become relentlessly dark. The Creator deeply regretted making humanity his heart, filled with profound sorrow. He resolved to wipe his creation from the earth, not just humans, but animals, crawling creatures, and birds alike, for I regret making them. Yet Noah found favor, a righteous man, standing tall in a broken age. Perhaps within our own storm, we too can find that grace. What if the ancient flood wasn't just rain, but the drowning of the human soul? Long ago, Noah walked in silence with God, while the world around him dissolved into chaos and violence. The Creator looked down and saw a broken mirror. Humanity had lost its way, twisted by its own dark desires. In the quiet, a heavy voice warned Noah that the end had come. The violence of man had sealed their fate, and the earth itself would be washed clean. Build an ark of cypress wood, a vessel against the coming dark. Seal it inside and out with pitch, a refuge for the soul. It must be built to exact sacred dimensions. Make it 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. A structure designed to survive the ultimate collapse. Put a window near the top to let in a sliver of heaven's light. Place a single door in its side, and build 3 levels within this dark sanctuary. For I am unleashing a great deluge upon the land, a purging tide to sweep away every living creature under heaven. All on earth shall return to the dust. But with you I will make a sacred promise. Step inside the vessel with your family, your wife, your sons, and their wives. Take 2 of every living creature to preserve the spark of life through the deep. Bring them male and female from the birds of the sky to the beasts of the field and every tiny creature that crawls upon the ground. They will come to you in pairs, seeking survival. You must also gather every kind of food imaginable, storing it deep within the vessel to sustain both your family and the beasts. Noah obeyed, building in silence against the mockery of the world. Then the divine voice spoke again, telling him to enter the shelter, for he alone remained true in a faithless age. Bring 7 pairs of every clean animal, male and female, and take just a single pair of those that are unclean to preserve their balance. Take 7 pairs of the birds of the air, ensuring their kind will restart life on the new earth. In 7 days the rains will fall. For 40 days and 40 nights water will pour down, and I will erase every living thing I created from the face of the world. Noah did exactly as he was commanded. He was 600 years old when the rising waters of the great deluge began to swallow the land. He stepped into the wooden womb, followed by his wife, his sons, and their wives escaping the rising tide. Alongside them walked the beasts, the birds, and every creeping thing. They entered 2 by 2, guided by an ancient, quiet instinct, just as the Creator had commanded. And after 7 days of agonizing waiting, the heavens finally broke and the waters rose. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, the abyss ruptured. Great fountains from the deep burst open, and the floodgates of heaven tore apart. A crushing rain pounded the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On that precise day, Noah, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, his wife, and their 3 daughters-in-law had safely shut themselves away inside the massive vessel. They were joined by every species of wild beast, domestic animal, and crawling thing that moved across the dry land, and every winged fowl of the sky. They crowded into the ark, 2 by 2, carrying the fragile breath of life. They came as male and female of all living things, fulfilling the divine decree. Then God shut the door behind them. The deluge raged for 40 days, and as the waters swelled, they lifted the heavy vessel high above the drowning land. The flood surged violently, drowning the dry land, and the lonely vessel drifted across an endless sea. The waters rose so high that even the loftiest mountains under heaven vanished beneath the waves. Rising 15 cubits above the highest submerged peaks, the waters conquered all. Every living thing that moved on earth perished. The birds, the livestock, the wild beasts, and all crawling creatures. Every human being, everyone who drew the breath of life on dry ground, was swallowed by the deep. The silence was absolute. Every living thing on the face of the earth was completely wiped out. Man, beast, crawler, and bird all were erased, leaving only a vast, empty mirror of water. Only Noah and his companions inside the vessel survived. For 150 days the waters ruled the world. But then God remembered Noah and every living thing drifting in the deep. He sent a great wind blowing across the waters, and they began to recede. The springs of the deep and the floodgates of heaven were closed, and the relentless rain finally stopped. After 150 days, the flood began to fade, and the vessel finally came to rest in the 7th month. On the 17th day of the month, it settled upon the peaks of Ararat. The waters kept falling until the 10th month, when the jagged mountaintops finally broke the surface. After 40 days, Noah opened the small window he had crafted and released a dark raven. It flew back and forth across the waste, waiting for the earth to dry. Next, he sent out a gentle dove to see if the ground had emerged. But finding no place to rest her feet, she returned to the safety of the vessel, for water still covered the face of the whole earth. He reached out, gently pulled her back inside, and waited another 7 days in the silence. Then once more he released the dove into the empty sky. At dusk, the dove returned carrying a freshly plucked olive leaf in her beak. It was a silent sign of hope. Noah knew the waters were falling. He waited 7 more days, released her again, and she never returned. In the 601st year of Noah's life, on the very first day of the 1st month, the flood waters had finally vanished from the earth. Noah removed the wooden covering of the vessel and looked out. The ground was visible. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was completely dry. Then the divine voice broke the silence, saying, "Step out of the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and their wives. Release every living creature that was saved with you, the birds of the air, the livestock, and every crawling thing, so they can spread across the land, breed abundantly, and slowly reclaim this reborn world." So Noah stepped out into the light with his family. Beside them, every beast, bird, and crawling creature left the dark vessel, returning to their natural homes on the earth. Noah built an altar offering a sacrifice of every clean animal and bird to show his devotion. And the Creator received this gesture, finding peace in the scent of their gratitude. In his heart, the Creator promised never to curse the earth again because of humanity acknowledging that man's inner thoughts are bent toward darkness from youth. He vowed never to destroy all life again. As long as the world remains, planting and harvest cold and heat summer and winter day and night will never stop. Then he blessed Noah and his sons, urging them to be fruitful, to multiply and fill the land. A new order was established, where the fear of humanity would rest upon every wild beast of the earth, and every bird of the air, upon everything crawling on the ground, and all the fish in the deep. They are given to you. Every living creature will now be your food, just like the green plants I gave you before. But you must never eat meat with its lifeblood still in it. For your own lifeblood I will demand accountability from every beast and from every human hand. I will demand a reckoning for the life of any brother. Whoever sheds human blood by human hands, shall their blood be shed. For man was made in the divine image. Now go forth and multiply. Flourish on this earth. For this covenant is not just ancient history, it is a promise forged in the deep waters of your own soul, a path of faith waiting for you today. What if the ancient flood was not just a historic disaster, but a mirror of our inner chaos? A binding promise written for every creature, bird and beast, stepping out of the dark sanctuary into a ruined world. A sacred treaty is forged with our fragile minds. Never again will the subconscious abyss rise to wash away all life, and never again will a cleansing catastrophe completely erase the ground we walk upon. The voice of creation offers an eternal signature, a contract spanning every generation yet unborn. Look up, for a shining prism of light is placed against the dark storm, a permanent symbol of peace between the divine and the fragile earth below. Whenever heavy clouds gather above, casting shadows of dread, a bright arc will split the darkness. This silent sentinel serves to remind the cosmos of an unbreakable bond shared with every breathing, living thing on this planet. The rising deeps will never again swallow humanity. A cosmic mirror hangs in the sky, a reminder that even the maker of all things gazes upon to stay his hand. This seal remains an eternal vow between the sacred and the mortal, bridging the divide to protect every vulnerable soul. To the survivor of the deluge, the Creator declares this luminous arch is the ultimate proof of my commitment to all living flesh. Emerging from the sanctuary of survival, Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, stepped into the silence. Ham, who would father Canaan, stood with his brothers as the new ancestors from whom the entire human family would branch out and cover the globe. In the raw aftermath, Noah tilled the fresh soil and planted a vineyard. Seeking escape, he drank deeply from his harvest, falling into a heavy stupor, exposed and vulnerable inside the darkness of his own tent. Ham looked upon his father's shame and rushed outside to expose the secret to his brothers. But Shem and Japheth, respecting the broken patriarch, carried a heavy robe on their shoulders, walking backward to shield his vulnerability from their own eyes. Keeping their faces averted, they preserved his dignity. When the old man finally shook off his drunken sleep, he realized exactly how his youngest son had betrayed his trust in his hour of weakness. In his fury, Noah spoke a dark destiny, declaring Canaan a servant to his own brothers. He praised the divine path of Shem, leaving Canaan to labor in the shadows of those he had exposed. May Japheth find vast borders and share the peaceful dwellings of Shem, while Canaan serves them both. Noah went on to witness 350 years of the post-flood world, dying at the age of 950. These are the sprawling bloodlines branching from the sons of Noah. From Shem, Ham, and Japheth, new generations arose. Japheth's lineage spread through Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. From Gomer came Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah, while Javan bore Elisha, Tarshish, the Kittim, and the Rodanim, carrying names of emerging tribes. From these descendants, the distant maritime lands of the nations were settled, each clan divided by unique speech and heritage. Meanwhile, Ham fathered Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. From the line of Cush came Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka, establishing power across the ancient sands. Rama fathered Sheba and Dedan. Then Cush fathered Nimrod, who rose to become the world's first true ruler, a legendary hunter of savage power. His reputation became immortalized, a symbol of raw human ambition matching the heavens. His empire began in the plains of Shinar, founding Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. From there, the conqueror marched into Assyria, building the great fortresses of Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and the massive city of Resen. This was a truly massive city. Egypt then fathered the Ludum, Animum, Lehabim, Naphtuam, Pathrusum, and Casluim, the ancestors of the Philistines and the Caphtorim. From Canaan came Sidon, his firstborn, along with Heth, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Gradually, these Canaanite clans drifted outward. Their boundaries stretched from Sidon toward Gerar and Gaza, reaching all the way to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as the remote borders of Lasha. These were the descendants of Ham, organized by tribe, language, territory, and nation. Meanwhile, Shem, the ancestor of the Hebrews and brother of Japheth, also saw his line expand. The elder brother Shem fathered Elam, Asher, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. From Aram came the tribes of Uz, Holgether, and Mash, carrying the ancient family name deeper into history. Arpachshad had fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber 2 sons were born. One was named Peleg, a word meaning division, because during his lifetime the world was fractured. His brother was named Yoktan, who fathered Almodad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. Names of tribes lost to the sands of time. All these were the sons of Joktan, and their territory stretched from Mesha toward Sephar in the eastern mountains. These are the children of Shem, defined by their families, languages, lands, and distinct nations. These clans of Noah spread across the post-flood world, dividing into distinct nations. Yet in those early days, the entire human family still shared a single language, speaking with one voice and one mind. Traveling from the east, they discovered a vast, inviting plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks, baking them thoroughly to build something permanent." Using these manufactured bricks instead of natural stone and tar for mortar, they made a bold proposal. "Come, let us build a massive city and a colossal tower that scrapes the very heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves to keep from being scattered and lost across the vast empty earth." The Creator descended to examine the grand city and the soaring tower built by human hands. He observed they are a single people speaking one language, and this is just the beginning. Soon, absolutely nothing they imagine will be beyond their reach. Let us go down and fracture their unified tongue so they can no longer comprehend each other's words. Thus, the divine hand dispersed them across the globe, halting their monumental project in its tracks. The unfinished ruins were named Babel, a lasting monument to the sudden confusion of human speech and the shattering of our collective ego. From that point, humanity was scattered to every corner of the earth. Now we trace the lineage of Shem, who was 100 years old when he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the deluge. Shem lived 500 years after this, fathering more children. Arpachshad lived 35 years before fathering Shelah, and went on to live another 403 years watching his descendants multiply. Shelah lived 30 years and fathered Eber. He lived another 403 years raising a family, while Eber reached 34 years of age before fathering Peleg. Eber lived 430 years after Peleg's birth. Peleg lived 30 years and fathered Reu, surviving another 209 years as his family tree continued to branch. Reu lived 32 years and fathered Serug, living another 207 years with his children, while Serug reached 30 years of age and fathered Nahor. Serug lived 200 years after Nahor's birth, raising a large family. Nahor reached 29 years of age and fathered Terah, living another 119 years to see his descendants grow. Terah lived 70 years, fathering Abram, Nahor, and Haran. These are his descendants. Haran fathered Lot, but died before his father Terah in the very land of his birth, the ancient, dusty city of Ur of the Chaldeans. Both Abram and Nahor chose wives to walk with them. Abram's wife was named Sarai, while Nahor married Milcah, the daughter of his late brother Haran, who also fathered Iscah. But Sarai was barren, unable to bear children. Seeking a new beginning, Terah gathered Abram, his grandson Lot, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, preparing to leave their past behind. Together they departed Ur of the Chaldeans, bound for the promised land of Canaan. But they settled halfway in Haran, where Terah lived out his 205 years before dying there. Then came the voice of destiny instructing Abram to leave his homeland, his relatives, and everything familiar behind. He was told to leave his past behind for an unseen land. His journey of exile became a quest of faith, showing us that our own departures can transform a single life into a great enduring blessing. What if an ancient call could echo through your own modern soul? God promised to bless those who blessed Abram and curse his enemies, binding all families to his destiny. So Abram left everything behind, and Lot followed him into the unknown. At 75 years old, a time when most men cling to comfort, Abram chose exile. He gathered his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all their possessions, and the people they had gathered in Haran to begin their long, uncertain journey. They set out for the rugged territory of Canaan, eventually crossing its borders. Abram traveled deep into this foreign land, reaching the sacred site of Sikkim, arriving at the great plains of Moor. But the fierce Canaanites already ruled these hills. Yet the Lord appeared to Abram in his vulnerability, promising that this very ground would belong to his future children. To mark this divine promise, he built a stone altar there. Moving onward, he pitched his tent in the wild hills, with Bethel to his west and the heights of Hai to his east. In that solitary place, he built another altar, crying out to the Lord. Abram continued his long trek toward the southern desert. But a harsh, crippling famine struck the country, forcing him to seek temporary refuge in the wealthy empire of Egypt just to survive. As they drew near the Egyptian border, fear began to corrupt his faith. He turned to his wife Sarai and whispered that her striking beauty would catch every eye. He warned her that when the Egyptians saw her, they would murder him to claim her. He begged her to pretend to be his sister, trading her safety to preserve his own life in a desperate play for survival. And so it happened. The moment they crossed the border into Egypt, the locals instantly noticed Sarai's mesmerizing beauty. Pharaoh's royal courtiers quickly noticed her and praised her beauty to the king, taking her directly into the palace. To reward her supposed brother, Pharaoh showered Abram with riches, sheep, cattle, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh's palace with terrible diseases because of Sarai, who was actually Abram's wife. Pharaoh summoned Abram in a rage, demanding to know why he was deceived. He asked why Abram claimed she was his sister, leading him to take her as his own. He declared, "Here is your wife. Take her and get out." The king ordered his royal guards to escort them safely out of the country. So Abram departed Egypt, journeying back toward the dry southern lands with his wife Lot and all of his accumulated wealth. By this point, Abram had become incredibly wealthy in livestock, silver, and gold. He traveled north again, returning to the very spot where he had first pitched his tent between Bethel and Hai. Standing before the original stone altar he had built, Abram once more called upon the name of the Lord. His nephew Lot had also amassed massive flocks, herds, and tents of his own. Soon the surrounding land could no longer support both families living side by side because their collective wealth was simply too immense. Bitter arguments broke out between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen, even as the Canaanites and Perizzites watched them from the surrounding hills. Abram spoke to Lot, pleading to end the conflict between their families, reminding him they were kin. He proposed they separate, offering Lot first choice of the entire territory. If Lot went left, Abram would go to the right, and if you choose the right side, then I will go to the left. Lot looked out across the lush plains of the Jordan Valley, which were fertile and green long before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It looked like paradise, beautiful like Egypt toward Zoar. So Lot claimed the entire Jordan Valley for himself and headed east, parting ways with his uncle forever. While Abram remained in Canaan, Lot settled near the prosperous cities of the plain, pitching his tents close to Sodom, a city infamous for its extreme wickedness and rebellion against God. After Lot had departed, leaving him alone, the Lord spoke to Abram, telling him to look out from where he stood to the north, south, east, and west. He promised that every stretch of land Abram could see would belong to him and his descendants forever. He declared his offspring would become as countless as the dust grains of the earth. Go now. Explore this land in every direction. Walk its entire length, for I am giving it all to you. So Abram packed up his tents and went to live in the great plain of Mamre in Hebron, building yet another altar to the Lord. It was during this era that Amrael and Arich ruled, along with the king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. They waged war against Bara, the king of Sodom, Bursa, the king of Gomorrah, and Shib, the king of Admah-Shemeber of Zebo, and the king of Bela. Their armies gathered in the valley of Siddim, which is now the Salt Sea, after serving Chedorlaomer for 12 years. In the 13th year they rebelled, and by the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and his allied kings invaded. They crushed the Rephaims in Asht, Tocharam, the Zuzims in Ham, the Ems in Shah, Kir, Tham, and the Harits in Seir, chasing them to El Paran near the desert. They swept back through En Mishpat, also known as Kadesh, destroying the entire territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites living in Hazantar. To defend their lands, the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zebo, and the king of Bela, also known as Zor, marched out together to face the invaders. They drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim, clashing against Chedram, Tidal, Amraphel, and Arioch. It was a brutal conflict pitting 4 mighty eastern kings against 5 local rulers. The valley of Siddim was treacherous, full of deep tar pits. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, trapped in the mire, while survivors scattered into the mountains. The victorious invaders looted both cities, taking all food and valuables. They also captured Abram's nephew Lot, who was living in Sodom, seizing all of his possessions before departing. A breathless survivor escaped the carnage and brought the news to Abram the Hebrew, who was camped among his allies Mamre Eshcol and Aner in the plains of Mamre. When Abram learned his relative had been captured, he quickly armed 318 trained men born right in his own household, pursuing the enemy to Dan. Striking in the dead of night, they crushed the invaders, chasing them all the way to Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the stolen wealth, rescued his captive relative Lot, and brought back the women and children. As he returned victorious from defeating Chedra and his allies, the humbled king of Sodom marched out to meet him. They gathered in the valley of Shave, known as the King's Valley. There, a mysterious figure named Melchizedek, the king of Salem, suddenly appeared bearing bread and wine. As priest of the Most High God, he blessed Abram, declaring him favored by the Creator of heaven and earth, and praised the divine power who had delivered his enemies into his hands. Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. Then the king of Sodom told Abram to keep the recovered goods for himself and only return the people. But Abram raised his hand in a solemn oath to the Lord, the Creator of heaven and earth, swearing that he would not take a single thread or a shoe strap belonging to Sodom, refusing to keep even a fraction of their wealth, so the pagan king could never boast of making him rich. He accepted only the food his young soldiers had consumed, allowing his allies, Anna Eshcol and Mamre, to keep their fair share. Following these events, the Lord spoke to Abram in a profound vision, reassuring him not to fear, promising to be his protector and his ultimate reward. But Abram questioned how any reward mattered when he remained childless with his servant Eliezer of Damascus, poised to inherit his estate. He lamented that God had given him no offspring, leaving a servant as his heir. Then the Lord answered him, declaring that this servant would not inherit his legacy. Instead, a son born of his own flesh would be his true heir. Why do we stare at the night sky seeking answers? God led him outside, saying, "Look up, count the stars. If you can, that is how vast your legacy will be." And against all logic, he believed, finding his soul aligned. I am the Creator, who drew you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land, God declared. But inside, fear whispered. Abram asked, "O Lord, how can I be certain this inheritance is truly mine?" "Bring me a heifer of 3 years, a female goat of 3 years, a ram of 3 years, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon," came the mysterious command. He split the beasts down the middle, lining up the severed halves, leaving the birds whole. As dark birds of prey swept down to feast on the flesh, Abram fought them off, guarding his fragile promise. At sunset, a heavy, unnatural trance gripped Abram, wrapping him in a terrifying shroud of darkness. Then, a chilling voice spoke. "Know this with certainty. Your descendants will be exiles in a foreign land, enslaved and oppressed. For 400 years they will suffer. But I will bring judgment upon their captors, and your people will break free, carrying great wealth with them. You will join your ancestors in peace, resting at a ripe old age." In the fourth generation your heirs will return, for the wickedness of this land has not yet reached its limit. Night fell absolute and black. Suddenly a smoking firepot and a blazing torch glided through the severed flesh. In that terrifying silence, the Creator bound himself to the man through an ancient, bloody pact. To your descendants I grant this land from the river of Egypt to the mighty Euphrates, the domains of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Yet, back in the camp, Abram's wife, Sarai, remained barren. She had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. Driven by despair, Sarai told her husband, "The Lord has closed my womb. Sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram yielded to his wife's voice. After 10 long years of waiting in Canaan, Sarai took Hagar, her Egyptian maid, and handed her over to Abram to be his secondary wife. He slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar realized she was expecting, she looked at her mistress with contempt. Furious and hurt, Sarai snapped at Abram, "This outrage is your fault. I put my servant in your arms, and now she treats me like nothing. May the Lord judge between us." Abram replied calmly, "Look, she is your servant. Do what you want with her." So Sarai treated her so harshly that Hagar fled into the brutal desert. There, by a spring of water on the road to Shur, a divine messenger found her shivering in the wasteland. He asked Hagar, servant of Sarai, "Where have you come from, and where are you going?" She answered, "I am running away from my mistress Sarai." The messenger of the Lord commanded, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority. I will give you more descendants than anyone can count. You are pregnant and will give birth to a son. Name him Ishmael, because God heard your cries of pain. He will live like a wild, untamed man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone against him, yet he will stand defiant near his kindred." Astonished, Hagar named the Lord who spoke to her, "The God who sees me." She gasped, "Have I really seen the one who watches over me?" That spring, located between Kadesh and Bered, was named the Well of the Living One. Soon, Hagar bore Abram a son named Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to his first son Ishmael. When Abram reached 99 years of age, the Lord appeared once more, saying, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully, live with integrity, and I will seal my sacred promise to you." Abram threw himself face down on the earth in absolute reverence. God spoke to him, saying, "This is my eternal bond with you. You will become the father of a multitude of nations. No longer will your name be Abram. You will be Abraham, for I will make you incredibly fruitful. Nations and kings will rise from you. I will establish this covenant as an unbreakable, everlasting bond between me, you, and all your descendants to come. I will be your God and the God of your children. I will give you this land of Canaan where you are now a wanderer as a permanent home forever." Then God instructed Abraham, "You and your future generations must honor your side of this sacred pact. This is the crucial requirement you must keep between us. Every male among you must be circumcised. This physical mark in your flesh will serve as the permanent sign of our covenant. When a baby boy is 8 days old, he must be circumcised. This applies to every generation, whether they are born in your household or bought from a foreigner. Every person under your care must carry this mark. My covenant will be etched directly into your flesh, an eternal sign. Any male who is not marked in this way will be completely cut off from his community. He has broken my sacred bond," God told Abraham. "Do not call your wife Sarai anymore. Her name is now Sarah. I will bless her and give you a son through her. She will become a mother of nations and kings." Abraham fell face down again, but this time he laughed to himself. He wondered in disbelief, "Can a man who is 100 years old have a child? Can Sarah give birth at 90? Abraham pleaded. "If only Ishmael could find favor in your eyes." But God responded, "No, Sarah will bear you a son. You will name him Isaac, and I will establish my eternal covenant with him. I have heard your prayer for Ishmael. I will surely bless him, make him highly fruitful, and multiply his descendants. He will father 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my ultimate covenant belongs to Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this exact time next year." When the conversation ended and God departed, Abraham acted immediately. That very day he took his son Ishmael and every single male in his household, whether born there or bought, and circumcised them, obeying God's command. Abraham was 99 years old when he underwent this painful seal of the covenant. His son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. On that single transformative day, father and son carried the mark together. Every servant and stranger in his household underwent the rite alongside them. Afterward, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the sacred oak trees of Mamre. As he sat at the entrance of his tent in the oppressive midday heat, he looked up. 3 mysterious travelers stood nearby. Hurrying from his tent to greet them, he bowed low to the dust. He pleaded, "My lords, if I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass by your servant. Let me bring a little water to wash your feet. Rest yourselves here under the shade of this tree. Let me fetch some food to refresh your spirits before you continue your journey, since you have honored my home." "Do as you say," they replied. Abraham rushed back inside the tent to Sarah, urging her, "Quick, prepare 3 large measures of fine flour, knead it, and bake some bread." Abraham then ran to the herd, selected a choice calf, and had his servant prepare it. Offering them milk curds and the meat, he stood by them. Are we like Abraham, hosting the divine without even knowing it? Why do we hide our deepest doubts in the shadows? As the travelers ate beneath the oak, they asked Abraham, "Where is Sarah?" "Inside the tent," he replied. The stranger promised to return in a year, declaring that Sarah would bear a son. Listening from the tent door, Sarah felt the weight of their advanced years, knowing her body had long since withered. Her biological clock had stopped. In the quiet of her mind, Sarah laughed bitterly, wondering how a worn-out, aging woman could ever experience joy again. With an aging husband, it seemed impossible. Yet the divine asked Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Does she doubt? Is there anything too difficult for the Creator of all?" The promise was clear. Next spring, a son would be born. Terrified of her own silent skepticism, Sarah lied, denying she laughed. But the quiet voice insisted, "No, you did laugh." As the travelers rose and looked toward the doomed city of Sodom, Abraham walked with them. The divine paused, pondering whether to conceal the dark judgment that was about to unfold. Knowing this man was destined to build a great nation, carrying a blessing for the entire world, the divine trusted him to guide his household in the ways of justice. They would walk the path of righteousness, acting with integrity, so that every ancient promise spoken over his lineage would finally be fulfilled. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah was deafening, their corruption too deep to ignore. The divine resolved to descend into their darkness, to witness firsthand if their decay was as absolute as the cries suggested. While the others turned toward the valley, Abraham remained standing in the presence of the divine. Stepping closer, his soul trembled as he asked, "Will you destroy the innocent along with the guilty? What if there are 50 good people left in that city? Will you sweep them away? Or spare the entire place for the sake of those 50? It is unthinkable to treat the good and the cruel the same way. That cannot be your path. Shouldn't the ultimate judge of this world act with absolute justice?" The reply came, "If 50 good souls remain, the city will be spared." Realizing his own audacity, Abraham spoke again to his Creator, acknowledging that he was merely a fragile creature, made of dust and ashes. What if there are only 45 will? You destroy the whole valley for the sake of 5 missing souls? The answer came. If I find 45, I will spare them. Abraham pushed further, asking what would happen if only 40 could be found. The response remained merciful. I will not destroy it for the sake of those 40. Pleading for patience, Abraham begged not to anger the divine, asking what if only 30 were there. Again, the promise held. I will not do it if 30 are found. Yet Abraham pressed on. What if there are only 20? The Creator replied, I will spare it for those 20. Abraham begged one last time, pleading for permission to speak just once more. What if only 10 are found? The reply came, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then the divine departed, and Abraham slowly returned to his tent. As evening fell, 2 messengers arrived in Sodom. Lot, sitting by the city gates, saw them approaching and stood up to greet the strangers. Bowing with his face to the cold ground, Lot pleaded with them to find refuge in his home, wash their feet, and rest for the night before continuing their journey at the break of dawn. They refused at first, preferring to sleep in the cold streets, but he insisted. Finally, they entered his home, where he prepared a warm meal for them, and they ate with him. Before they could rest, a hostile crowd gathered. Men from every corner of Sodom, both the young and the old, surrounded the house in the dark. They shouted for Lot, demanding to know where the evening travelers were. Bring them out to us, they cried, so we can violate them. Slipping outside, Lot closed the door behind him and begged the crowd not to commit such evil. In a desperate, twisted compromise, he offered his 2 virgin daughters to the mob instead, telling them to do as they pleased. He pleaded with them to leave his guests in peace under his roof. But the crowd sneered, telling him to back off, angry that an outsider was trying to judge them. They threatened to treat him worse than his guests, lunging forward and pressing hard against Lot, nearly breaking the heavy door down. Suddenly, the guests reached out, pulled Lot safely inside, and locked the door behind him. They struck the violent crowd outside with a blinding fog, leaving them groping in vain for the entrance until they grew exhausted. The messengers urged Lot to gather his family, daughters, and sons-in-law to flee. They warned him that the outcry against this place had reached the heavens, and they were sent to destroy it. With massive destruction looming, Lot rushed to warn his future sons-in-law, pleading with them to escape immediately, warning that the Creator was about to wipe the city off the map. But to his daughter's suitors, his desperate warnings sounded like a cruel joke. As the first light of morning broke, the messengers urgently warned Lot to grab his wife and daughters and run, so they would not be consumed by the city's wicked sins. When he still hesitated, they grabbed their hands, pulling them out in mercy. They dragged them outside the gates to safety. Once they were out of the city, the messenger shouted, "Run for your lives! Do not look back, and do not stop in the valley. Flee to the hills to survive." But Lot, terrified of the unknown, protested. "You have shown me incredible kindness by saving my life," he cried. "But I cannot make it all the way to the mountains. I fear the harsh wilderness, and death will surely overtake me there. Look at that small city nearby. Let me escape there instead. It is only a tiny town, and my life will be spared if I go." The messenger agreed to his request, promising not to destroy that small town. "Run there quickly, because I cannot unleash the judgment until you are safely inside." They named the town Zoar. Just as the morning sun rose and Lot stepped inside, torrents of burning sulfur and fire rained down from the heavens, destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. The entire valley was wiped out, along with every living creature and green thing. But Lot's wife, unable to let go, looked back and was frozen into a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham returned to the spot where he had stood, pleading. He looked out over the valley, where Sodom and Gomorrah once thrived. Thick smoke billowed from the ruined earth like a massive, roaring furnace. Yet in the midst of this absolute devastation, the Creator remembered Abraham's plea, rescuing Lot from the fiery ruin that consumed his home. Terrified to remain in Zoar, Lot fled into the lonely mountains, living in isolation with his 2 daughters, far from civilization. They took shelter in a dark cave. Believing they were the last survivors, the eldest daughter told her sister, "Our father is old, and there are no men left to carry on our lineage. We must get him drunk on wine so we can sleep with him and preserve our family line." That night they plied him with wine, and the eldest sister went in. Drunken and completely oblivious, the father never realized when she lay down or when she got up. The next morning, the eldest told her younger sister, "I slept with him last night." To preserve their bloodline, they got him drunk again that night. In their desperate, fearful exile, do we not also repeat the patterns of our own undoing? The younger sister surrendered to the darkness, lying with him in his stupor. He woke up completely unaware of her presence. Thus, both of Lot's daughters carried their father's seed. The oldest daughter gave birth to a son and named him Moab, the founding ancestor of the Moabite nation. The younger sister also bore a son, naming him Ben-Ami, the father of the Ammonites. Abraham journeyed into the dry southern wilderness, settling between Kadesh and Shur. Haunted by fear, he hid his true identity, telling the locals that his wife Sarah was actually his sister. Abimelech, the local ruler, seized Sarah. But God pierced his subconscious in a dream, warning him, "You are a dead man if you touch her, for she belongs to another." Yet Abimelech had not touched her. Terrified, he pleaded, "Lord, would you destroy a guiltless man? He told me she was his sister, and she herself said he was her brother. I acted with a completely clean conscience and innocent hands." God answered him in the dream, "Yes, I know your heart was pure. It was I who kept you from committing a grave sin against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife. He is a prophet who will pray for you, and your life will be spared. But if you refuse to return her, know that you and your entire household will surely die." Terrified, Abimelech rose at dawn, summoned all his officials, and told them everything that had happened. An overwhelming dread gripped the men. Abimelech summoned Abraham, demanding, "What have you done to us? How did I offend you that you would bring such guilt upon my kingdom? You have committed acts against me that should never be done." Abimelech then asked Abraham, "What were you seeing in us that drove you to do this?" Abraham confessed, "I assumed there was no moral compass in this place and that you would kill me for my wife. Yet she truly is my stepsister, sharing my father, but not my mother. And so she became my wife. When God drove me to wander far from my family home, I asked her to show me this loyalty wherever we went. I told her to call me her brother in every land." Abimelech then gave Abraham livestock and servants, restoring Sarah to her husband as a gesture of peace. Abimelech said, "My land lies open before you. Settle wherever you wish." To Sarah he said, "I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This gift will vindicate your honor before your people and prove your complete innocence to everyone." With Sarah cleared, Abraham prayed, and God healed Abimelech's wife and servants, opening their wombs to bear children. For the Lord had closed every womb in the palace because of what happened to Sarah. But now, God remembered his promise to her, doing exactly what he had spoken. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, precisely when God said it would happen. Abraham named this miracle child born of Sarah, Isaac. Following God's ancient command, Abraham circumcised his son Isaac on his 8th day. Abraham was 100 years old when this child of promise was born. Sarah cried, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone will laugh with me. Who would have believed that I would nurse a baby, yet I bore him a son in his old age." The child grew and was finally weaned. To celebrate, Abraham threw a great feast. But Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of the Egyptian maid Hagar, mocking her young child. She demanded of Abraham banish this slave woman and her son. He must never share the inheritance with Isaac. This demand deeply distressed Abraham, for Ishmael was his son too. But God reassured Abraham, "Do not let your heart be heavy for the boy and your servant. Listen to Sarah and do exactly as she asks, for your legacy must continue through Isaac. Your true line will be traced through Isaac. Yet I will also forge a great nation from the slave woman's son, because he carries your blood." Early the next morning, Abraham rose, took bread and a skin of water, and placed them on Hagar's shoulder. He sent her away with the boy, and she departed, wandering lost in the dry, silent wilderness of Beersheba. When their water ran dry, she laid the boy under a desert bush. She walked away and sat down a bowshot distance off, whispering, "I cannot watch my child die." As she sat weeping in the silence, God heard the boy crying. The angel of God called down to Hagar from heaven, asking, "What is troubling you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the boy crying right where he lies. Go lift him up and hold him close. I will make him a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She filled her container and gave the boy a drink. God stayed with the youth as he grew up in the desert, becoming a skilled archer. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother found him an Egyptian wife. Around that time, Abimelech and his general Phicol told Abraham, "God is clearly with you in all you do. Therefore swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me, my children, or any of my descendants. Treat me in this land where you have lived with the same kindness I have shown you." Abraham agreed, but then confronted Abimelech because of a water well that the king's servants had violently seized. Abimelech replied, "I have no idea who did this. You never spoke of it before, and I only heard about it today." So Abraham brought livestock to Abimelech, and they made a covenant. Abraham set 7 female lambs apart from the flock, prompting Abimelech to ask what those 7 lambs represented. Abraham replied, "You must accept these 7 female lambs from my hand, to serve as a witness that I was indeed the one who dug this well." That is why the place was called Beersheba, because both men took an oath there. After establishing their treaty, Abimelech and his general Phicol returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a sacred tree in Beersheba and worshipped the Lord, the eternal God. There he remained a stranger in the Philistine territory for a very long time. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith to its absolute limit. He called out Abraham, and Abraham replied, "Here I am." He said, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love so deeply, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham rose and saddled his donkey. Taking 2 servants and his son Isaac, he cut the wood for the sacrifice and set out toward the place God had designated. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the mountain in the distance. He told his servants, "Stay here with the donkey. My son and I will go ahead to worship, and then we will return to you." Abraham placed the wood for the offering on his son Isaac's shoulders, while he carried the fire and the knife. Together, father and son walked into the unknown. Isaac broke the silence and said, "Father Abraham replied, 'Yes, my son.'" Isaac asked, "We have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "My son, God himself will provide the lamb for the sacrifice." With those words, the 2 of them walked on together until they reached the place God had chosen. There Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on top of the altar. Reaching out, he raised the knife to slay his son. Suddenly the angel of the Lord called from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. The angel said, "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not hurt him. Now I know that you truly fear God, because you did not withhold your only son from me. What happens when we are asked to sacrifice our own future? Abraham looked up, his heart heavy, and saw a ram trapped in the thorns, a substitute, offered to spare his only son. He named that sacred ground, "The Lord will provide." Even today it remains a monument to the unseen hands that guide us through our darkest trials. Then a voice pierced the heavens a second time. The divine oath was sealed, because Abraham did not hold back his deepest love, refusing to cling to his own legacy. A boundless promise was born. His descendants would multiply like the endless stars in the night sky and the sand on the shore, destined to conquer the gates of their enemies. Through his lineage, the entire world would find a blessing, all because of his surrender. With the trial over, Abraham returned to his companions, heading back to Beersheba. Settling in Beersheba, whispers of the outside world reached Abraham. Word came that his brother Nahor's family was rapidly expanding in the east. Milcah had borne several sons, including Uzbuz, Kemuel, Hesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. From Bethuel came Rebekah, a thread of fate. These 8 were born to Nahor, while his concubine Reumah also brought new life into the family tree. She bore Tebagaham, Tahash, and Maacah. But then time caught up with them. Sarah reached the age of 127 years. In Hebron, in the land of Canaan, Sarah breathed her last. Broken by grief, Abraham wept for his lifelong companion. Rising from his mourning, he approached the Hittites, confessing that he was merely a wandering stranger among them. "Sell me a piece of land for a burial plot, so I may finally lay my beloved to rest." The locals responded with deep respect, calling him a prince of God. They offered him the finest of their tombs, promising that no one would deny him a place to bury his deceased wife. Grateful Abraham rose and bowed deeply before the people of the land, honoring their kindness. He spoke to them, asking them to approach Ephron, son of Zohar, on his behalf. Abraham wished to buy the cave of Machpelah at the edge of Ephron's field, offering to pay the full market price to secure a permanent family tomb. Now Ephron the Hittite was sitting among his people. He answered Abraham publicly right at the city gates, where all could hear, saying, "No, my lord, please listen to me instead. I freely give you the field and the cave within it. Here in front of my own people, I present it to you. Bury your dead." Abraham bowed once more to the assembly, but insisted on paying. He spoke directly to Ephron, saying, "I hear your generosity, but I must pay you the full price of the field. Accept my payment and I will lay her to rest." Ephron replied, "My lord, listen to me. The land is valued at 400 shekels of silver. What is such a small amount between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead." And Abraham agreed to the price. Abraham weighed out the silver in front of all the witnesses, 400 shekels of the current merchant standard. Thus, Ephron's land in Machpelah facing Mamre, including the field and its cave, was transferred. Every single tree standing within the field and along its borders was legally secured as Abraham's property, witnessed by the entire community of the Hittites. They stood as witnesses at the city gates. Shortly after Abraham laid his wife Sarah to rest in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, which is Hebron in Canaan, the land was officially secured as his family tomb. Now Abraham was advanced in years old and weary, yet the Lord had blessed him richly in every aspect of life. He called his oldest, most trusted servant who managed his entire household. "Put your hand under my thigh," Abraham commanded, "and swear an oath by the Lord. Swear by the God of heaven and earth that you will not choose a wife for my son from these local Canaanites. Go back to my homeland, to my relatives, and find a wife for Isaac." The servant asked, "What if the woman refuses to follow me back to this distant land? Should I take your son Isaac back to the country you left behind?" Abraham warned him, "Under no circumstances are you to take my son back there. The Lord God of heaven, who called me out of my father's house, and led me away from my homeland, promised me with a sacred oath that he would give this very land to my descendants. He will send his messenger ahead of you to guide your search. If she refuses to come, you are released from this oath. Just never take my son back there." So the servant took the solemn oath, placing his hand under his master's thigh. The servant loaded 10 of his master's camels with valuable gifts and set out carrying the wealth and authority of Abraham's estate. He traveled far into Mesopotamia, arriving at Nahor's city. As evening fell, he rested his camels near a well outside the gates, just as the local women were coming out to draw water. He prayed, "Lord God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show your unwavering loyalty to my master." I am standing here by this spring while the young women of the city approach to draw water. Let it be that when I ask one of them to lower her jar so I may drink, she replies, "Drink, and I will water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for Isaac. That is how I will know you have shown favor to my master." Before he had even finished speaking his prayer, Rebekah appeared with a water jar balanced on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, born to Milcah and Abraham's brother Nahor. She was exceptionally beautiful, a young woman, untouched and pure. She stepped down to the spring, filled her jar, and began to walk up. The servant rushed forward to meet her, asking for a small drink of water. "Drink, my lord," she replied warmly. She quickly lowered the heavy jar to her hands, offering him a refreshing drink. When he was satisfied, she offered to draw water for his camels too until they had drank their fill. Quickly emptying her jar into the trough, she ran back to the well, drawing enough for all 10 camels. The servant watched her in silent wonder, waiting to see if the Lord had truly blessed his long journey with success. Once the camels had finished drinking, he presented her with a gold nose ring and 2 heavy gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. "Tell me, whose daughter are you? Is there room in your father's house for us to stay?" "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah and Nahor," she replied. Then she added, "We have plenty of straw feed for your animals and space for you to stay." Overwhelmed, the man bowed low in worship. In this moment, the heavy burden of exile lifted, proving that even in our deepest uncertainty, a silent, guiding truth is always at work. His path had aligned with his destiny. The young woman ran home to share this revelation, her brother Laban listening intently, unaware of the generational shift that had just begun. Laban rushed out to the well. He saw the shimmering gold on his sister's wrists, a material sign of a cosmic invitation that was about to change their entire lineage. Hearing Rebekah's story, he found the stranger waiting quietly beside his camels. Laban extended an invitation. "Come inside, you who are blessed. Why stand outside in the cold shadow of doubt? We have prepared a place for you." The journey ended, the camels were unloaded, and as the dust was washed from their feet, they realized this ancient search is ultimately our own. Food was set before him, but he refused to eat. Why do our deepest callings demand we ignore our basic needs? Speak on. "I am the servant of Abraham," he began. "The divine has blessed my master with immense weight in this world, giving him vast flocks, silver, gold, servants, camels, and beasts of burden. He is a man of massive influence. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son in her old age. To this single child my master has given absolutely everything he owns. My master bound me by an oath. He said, 'Do not choose a wife for my son from the local tribes where I dwell. You must travel back to my homeland, to my own people, and find his bride there.' But I asked my master, 'What if the woman refuses to follow me across this vast desert?' He replied, 'The divine presence I walk before will send a messenger with you, guaranteeing your path is successful. You will find his bride among my people. Only then will you be released from your promise. If you reach my people and they refuse to give her to you, you are completely free from this oath.' When I arrived at the spring today, I prayed, "Divine guide of my master Abraham, if you are truly leading me on this path, look at me now. I am standing by this well. Let this be the test of destiny. When a young woman comes to draw water, and I ask her for a drink from her heavy jar, let her say to me, 'Drink, and I will also water your camels.' Let her be the chosen partner appointed for my master's son." Even before I finished speaking those silent words in my heart, Rebekah appeared carrying her water jar on her shoulder. She walked down to the spring and drew water. I asked her for a drink. Without hesitation, she lowered the jar from her shoulder and said, "Drink, and I will make sure your thirsty camels are watered too." After we drank, I asked her whose daughter she was. She replied that she was the daughter of Bethuel, the son born to Milcah and Nahor. I placed a gold ring on her nose and heavy bracelets on her wrists. Then I bowed low in deep worship, praising the creator of my master Abraham, who guided me directly to this family to find his son's bride. Now tell me if you will show true loyalty and kindness to my master. If not, speak plainly so I may know which way to turn." Laban and Bethuel answered, "This is clearly guided by a higher power. We cannot say yes or no. Look, Rebekah is here before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son." Hearing these words, Abraham's servant fell to the earth in solemn worship. Then he brought out magnificent treasures of gold, silver, and beautiful clothing, presenting them directly to Rebekah. He also gave costly gifts to her mother and brother. They ate and drank, celebrating through the night in that ancient dwelling. When morning came, they woke up, and he requested to return to his master immediately. But her mother and brother pleaded, "Let the young woman stay with us for at least 10 days before she departs." He urged them, "Do not delay me now that my journey has been made successful. Let me go back to my master." They replied, "We will call her and ask for her own choice." They called Rebekah and asked, "Will you go with this man?" She simply answered, "I will go." So they sent her off with her nurse alongside Abraham's servant and his companions. They blessed Rebekah, saying, "You are our sister. May you become the mother of countless millions, and may your descendants conquer the strongholds of their enemies." Rebekah and her young maids mounted their camels and followed the traveling stranger. Meanwhile, Isaac was returning from the remote well of Lahairoi as he was living in the arid southern region. At twilight, Isaac went out into the quiet fields to meditate. Looking up, he saw the caravan approaching. At the same moment, Rebekah raised her eyes. When she spotted Isaac, she quickly got down from her camel. She asked the servant, "Who is that man walking across the field to meet us?" The servant replied, "That is my master." Hearing this, she covered her face with a veil. The servant explained everything that had transpired. Isaac then led Rebekah into his mother's tent. She became his wife, and he loved her deeply. And Isaac found comfort after his mother's passing. Later, Abraham married again, taking a wife named Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan became the father of Sheba and Dedan, whose descendants split into various tribes. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. These were all descendants of Keturah. Yet Abraham left his entire inheritance to Isaac. But to the sons of his other wives, Abraham gave gifts and sent them away from his heir Isaac, sending them far into the vast eastern lands during his lifetime. In total, Abraham lived for 175 years. Then Abraham took his last breath, dying at a very old age, fully satisfied with life, and was gathered to his ancestors. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the ancient cave of Machpelah, near Mamre in the field of Ephron the Hittite. It was the land Abraham had purchased where both he and Sarah were laid to rest. After Abraham's death, the divine blessing passed on to Isaac, who settled near the well of Lahairoi. This is the lineage of Ishmael, the son born to Abraham by Hagar, the Egyptian servant. These are the names of Ishmael's sons listed in order of their births. They were Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. These 12 sons of Ishmael became famous tribal leaders, ruling over their own designated villages and strongholds. Ishmael lived for a total of 137 years. He took his final breath and was gathered to his ancestors in peace. His descendants settled in the vast region from Havilah to Shur near the border of Egypt. Ishmael lived in opposition to all his relatives. Now this is the story of Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the sister of Laban the Aramean. Because she was unable to have children, Isaac prayed intensely to the divine on her behalf. The prayer was answered, and Rebekah became pregnant. But the baby struggled constantly inside her womb. Overwhelmed, she asked, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to seek answers. A divine voice answered her. 2 nations are inside your womb. 2 distinct peoples will emerge from your body. One will be stronger than the other, and the older brother will serve the younger. When the time came for her to give birth, she indeed had twins. The first baby came out reddish, his skin covered with thick hair like a cloak. They named him Esau. Soon after, his brother emerged, grasping Esau's heel, so they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. As time passed, the boys grew up. Esau became a skilled hunter, loving the open wild, while Jacob was quiet, staying close to home. Isaac favored Esau because he loved wild game, but Rebekah favored Jacob. One day, Jacob made a stew. Esau returned from the wilderness completely exhausted. He begged Jacob, "Let me gulp down some of that red stew because I am starving." Because of this, they called him Edom. Jacob replied, "Trade me your birthright first." Esau said, "Look, I am about to die of hunger, so what good is a birthright to me?" Jacob insisted, "Swear an oath to me now." And Esau swore it. He sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave him bread and lentil stew. Esau ate, drank, stood up, and left. In this way, he threw away his sacred inheritance. There was another famine in the land, a harsh echo of Abraham's day, testing their physical survival and their spiritual identity. What happens when we flee our fears, only to face our deepest trials? When Isaac sought refuge with Abimelech, king of the Philistines, a silent voice halted him. "Do not escape to Egypt. Stay where I guide you. Stay here in this dust, and I will walk beside you. I will bless your descendants, gifting them this horizon, keeping the ancient promise I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your children as countless as the stars inheriting these lands. And through your bloodline, every nation on this earth will find its ultimate healing. This is because Abraham listened to my voice, honoring my laws, my secrets, and my eternal decrees." Settling in Gerar, Isaac faced the ancient terror of the outsider. When asked about his wife, he lied. "She is my sister," hiding his identity to survive. He feared they would murder him to possess Rebekah, for her beauty was striking. Seasons passed in this uneasy lie until Abimelech looked out of his palace window and witnessed a private moment. Isaac was holding Rebekah, comforting her not as a brother, but as a husband. Summoning Isaac, Abimelech confronted him. "Clearly she is your wife. Why on earth did you claim she was your sister?" Isaac confessed his paralyzing fear of death. Abimelech cried out, "What have you done to us? Someone could have easily taken your wife, bringing moral ruin and collective guilt upon our entire nation." Abimelech issued a decree to his people, "Touch this man or his wife, and you die." Protected at last, Isaac sowed his crops in that parched soil, reaping an incredible 100-fold harvest that very year. The divine blessing rested upon him. Isaac grew wealthier and more powerful by the day, owning massive flocks, endless herds, and a great household of servants. But prosperity breeds resentment. Envying his growth, the Philistines choked his father's old water wells with dirt. A psychological warfare of burying the past to starve the present. Finally, Abimelech ordered Isaac to leave. "You have grown too powerful for us," he said. So Isaac packed his tents, moving down into the valley of Gerar to settle. Isaac did not fight. He simply began the arduous work of reclaiming his heritage, reopening the wells his father Abraham had dug. He called them by their original names, mapping his path through ancestral memory. Digging deeper into the dry valley, Isaac's servants struck a fresh, bubbling spring. But the local shepherds of Gerar immediately claimed it. "This water belongs to us," they shouted. He named the first well Contention, the second Opposition. Each name marked the internal struggle of exile and boundary until he chose to walk away from the endless conflict. They dug a third well, and this time there was peace. He called it Room, declaring, "Finally, the Creator has made space for us to grow and flourish in this land." From there, he climbed up to Beersheba. That very night, a divine presence filled the dark. "I am the God of Abraham your father. Do not fear. I am with you, and I will multiply your children." To mark the sacred ground, Isaac built an altar and called on the divine name, pitching his tents. While his servants dug a new well, Abimelech arrived from Gerar, accompanied by his advisor, Ahuzath, and his military commander, Phicol. "Why have you come to me?" Isaac asked them. "You hated me enough to exile me from your lands." They answered, "We can clearly see the Creator is with you. We want to bind our peoples with a sacred treaty. Promise us that you will do us no harm, just as we did not harm you. We let you go in peace, recognizing that you carry a divine blessing." To seal this pact, Isaac prepared a great feast, and they shared food and drink late into the night. Early the next morning, they woke and swore solemn oaths to one another. Then Isaac sent them on their way in perfect peace. That very afternoon, Isaac's servants rushed to him with news. "We have found water," they shouted. He named the well Oath, and to this day, the city is known as Beersheba. At 40, Esau married Hittite women, choosing rebellion over legacy. This division in the bloodline became a heavy weight of grief, fracturing the peace of Isaac and Rebekah. Years passed. Blind and fading, Isaac called out for his eldest son, Esau. "Here I am, father," Esau answered. The old man sighed. "Look at me, my son. I have grown very old. I do not know when my final day on earth will come. Take your bow and arrows, hunt wild game in the hills, and prepare that savory meal I love so much. Serve it to me, so I may give you my sacred blessing before I die." But Rebekah was listening in the shadows. As Esau headed out to hunt, a plan began to form. Rebekah hurried to her younger son, Jacob. "I just heard your father speaking to your brother Esau," she whispered. "He wants him to bring back wild game. He wants to bless him before he faces death. Listen closely to me now, my son. Do exactly what I am about to tell you. Go quickly to the flock and bring me 2 young goats. I will prepare a delicious feast just the way your father likes it, so you can receive his deathbed blessing instead." Jacob hesitated, facing the weight of his mother's shadow. "My brother is hairy and I am smooth. What if father touches me? He will see my mask and I will inherit a curse, not a blessing." His mother urged, "Let any curse fall on me. Just listen to me and fetch the goats." So Jacob obeyed, bringing the young animals back to his mother. She cooked the meat perfectly. Then Rebekah took Esau's clothes and dressed her younger son Jacob, wrapping him in his brother's identity, initiating a profound spiritual drama of stolen destiny. She wrapped the goatskins around his hands and smooth neck. Handing him the freshly baked bread and meat she sent him in. Jacob approached the blind patriarch, whispering, "My father." Isaac replied, "I am here. But who are you, my son?" Jacob looked at his blind father and lied. "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done what you asked. Please sit up. Eat of my hunt so you can bless me." Surprised, Isaac asked, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Jacob lied again. "The Lord your God guided me to it." Isaac whispered, "Come closer so I can touch you and be sure you are truly Esau." Jacob stepped near. The old man ran his trembling hands over him. "The voice sounds like Jacob," he murmured, "but these hands feel like Esau." He could not see through the deception because the hands felt rough and hairy. Preparing to bless him, Isaac asked one last time, "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob lied. "I am." Isaac nodded. "Bring the food closer. Let me eat of my son's hunt, so I may bless you." Jacob served him the meat and poured him wine to drink. Then Isaac said, "Come close and kiss me, my son." Jacob stepped forward and kissed the old man. Catching the wild scent of his clothes, Isaac blessed him. "Ah, the smell of my son is like a fertile field blessed by the Creator. May the heavens send you dew and the earth yield rich harvests of grain and wine. May nations serve you and empires bow before you. Rule over your brothers and let your mother's sons bow. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." Almost the exact moment Isaac finished giving this sacred blessing, and just as Jacob slipped silently out of his father's presence, the atmosphere shifted. Esau returned from the wild. He cooked the fresh game and brought it to his father. "Sit up, father," he said eagerly. "Eat of my hunt so you can finally bless me." Stunned, Isaac asked, "Who are you?" "I am Esau," he replied. Isaac trembled violently, gasping, "Then, who was just here feeding me and taking your blessing? In this ancient mirror, whose mask do we wear? Why do we crave the validation of those who cannot see us?" Isaac said. I blessed him, and it stands. Esau, hearing this, cried out with a bitter scream, pleading, "Bless me too, O my father!" But Isaac whispered, "Your brother came with deceit and stole what was yours." Esau snapped, "Is he not rightly named the supplanter? Is he not Jacob? Twice now he has cheated me. First he took my birthright, and now he has stolen my blessing. Father, have you saved no blessing at all from me?" Isaac answered, "I have made him your master, and given him all his brothers as servants. I have promised him grain and wine. What is left for me to give you, my son?" But Esau begged, "Do you have only one blessing, father? Bless me too, O my father." Then Esau broke down, crying out in deep, bitter grief. His father Isaac answered him, "Your home will be far from the rich earth, away from the dew of heaven. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will tear his yoke from your neck." From that day on, Esau carried a burning hatred for Jacob because of the blessing their father gave him. Esau whispered in his heart, "My father will die soon. Once the morning ends, I will kill my brother Jacob." But word of this threat reached Rebekah's ears. She quickly sent for her younger son Jacob and warned him, "Your brother Esau is planning to kill you to ease his anger. Listen to me carefully now, my son. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury cools down and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send for you. Why should I lose both of my sons in a single day?" Later, Rebekah told Isaac, "I am weary of life because of these local Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of these local Hittite women, my life will not be worth living." So Isaac summoned Jacob, blessed him, and gave him a strict command, saying, "Do not marry any woman from Canaan." Go at once to the home of your grandfather Bethuel in Paddan Aram. Find a wife there among the daughters of your uncle Laban. May God Almighty bless you, make you fertile, and multiply your descendants so that you become a great nation. May He grant Abraham's blessing to you and your children so you may inherit this land where you now live as a stranger. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way to Paddan Aram, to Laban son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of both Jacob and Esau. Esau realized that his father Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to Paddan Aram to find a wife, giving him a strict warning as he blessed him, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman." He also saw that Jacob had obeyed their parents and journeyed to Paddan Aram. Realizing how much his father disliked the local Canaanite women, Esau went to the family of Ishmael. There he married Mahalath, the daughter of Abraham's son Ishmael and sister of Nebaioth, adding her to his wives. Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and set out toward Haran. As the sun began to set, Jacob stopped at a random place to spend the night. He took one of the stones from that ground, placed it under his head, and lay down to sleep. In his sleep he dreamed of a massive stairway resting on the earth, its top reaching into heaven, with the angels of God climbing up and down. Above it stood the Lord who spoke, "I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants this very land. Your descendants will be as countless as the dust of the earth. You will spread in all directions, and through you and your offspring, every family on earth will be blessed. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished everything I promised." Jacob woke from his sleep, startled. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not even know it. Terrified, he whispered, "How awesome and sacred is this place! This is none other than the house of God, the very gateway to heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had slept on, set it up as a memorial pillar, and poured sacred oil over it. He named that sacred place Bethel, although the city nearby had originally been called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow. "If God will stay with me, protect me on this journey, and give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's home, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone pillar will stand as God's house, and I will faithfully give back to you a tenth of everything you give me." Jacob continued his long journey, and finally arrived in the land of the eastern peoples. Looking around, he saw a well in an open field, with 3 flocks of sheep resting nearby. This well was where the shepherds watered their animals. But a massive stone was blocking the opening of the well, and everyone had to gather there first. They would roll the stone away, water the sheep, and then roll the heavy stone back into its place. Jacob approached them and asked, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We are from Haran," they replied. He asked, "Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" "Yes, we know him," they said. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes," they replied. "And look, here comes his daughter Rachel with his sheep," Jacob remarked. "But the sun is still high. It is too early to bring the animals in for the night. Why not water the sheep and take them back to pasture?" But they answered, "We cannot do that until all the flocks gather and they roll the stone away. Only then can we water the sheep." While they were still talking, Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel approaching, the daughter of his uncle Laban, tending his uncle's sheep, he stepped forward and single-handedly rolled the massive stone away from the mouth of the well. He watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He told her he was a relative, the son of her aunt Rebekah. Hearing this, she ran home to tell her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he rushed out to meet him. He hugged him, kissed him, and welcomed him into his home. Jacob explained everything that had happened. Laban declared, "You are truly my own flesh and blood." And Jacob stayed with him for a whole month. Then Laban said to him, "Just because you are my relative, you shouldn't work for me for free. What should your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters, Leah the older and Rachel the younger. Leah had delicate eyes, but Rachel was lovely and beautiful. Jacob was deeply in love with Rachel, so he offered, "I will work for you for 7 years to marry your younger daughter Rachel." Laban agreed, saying, "It is better to give her to you than to anyone else. Stay here with me." So Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, but they felt like only a few days to him because of his deep love for her. Finally, Jacob told Laban, "My time is up. Give me my wife so we can marry." Laban gathered everyone in the community and threw a great wedding feast, but when evening came, Laban secretly took his older daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob's tent instead, and Jacob slept with her. Laban also gave his servant Zilpah to Leah as her maid. But when morning came, Jacob woke up and looked beside him. It was Leah. Jacob confronted Laban, screaming, "Why have you deceived me?" Laban replied, "Our custom demands the firstborn marry first." In this betrayal, Jacob met his own reflection. Are we not also trapped in the cycles of our own unresolved deception? Why do we willingly enslave ourselves to our desires? Laban demanded 7 more years of exile for Rachel, and Jacob, bound by his obsession, quietly accepted the transaction. Rachel was finally his, accompanied by her maid Bilhah. But this triumph was shadowed by a quiet domestic war. Jacob loved Rachel, leaving her sister Leah unloved and cast aside as he began another 7 years of grueling identity-erasing toil. When the divine sees the unloved, the scales of fate shift. Leah, despised and ignored, became fertile, while the beloved Rachel remained barren. Bearing a son, Reuben, Leah cried out that God had finally witnessed her deep pain. She hoped this child would finally win her husband's heart. But the silence remained. When a second son was born, Leah named him Simeon, a monument to the fact that her cries of neglect had been heard by heaven. Desperate for connection, she conceived a 3rd time. With this birth, she convinced herself that 3 sons would surely force Jacob to love her, to finally bind his distant heart to hers. She named him Levi. Yet the true shift happened with her 4th son, Judah. No longer begging for her husband's validation, Leah turned her gaze upward, choosing praise over pity, and then her womb rested. Watching this, Rachel grew consumed by bitter envy. She confronted Jacob with a desperate, hysterical ultimatum. "Give me children, or I will die." Her pain only sparked Jacob's defensive, burning anger. "Am I God?" he snapped to. "Control the womb." In her desperation, Rachel offered a surrogate, her handmaid Bilhah. She begged Jacob to sleep with her, hoping to claim the child as her own. She surrendered her maid to Jacob's bed. The plan worked, and soon Bilhah conceived, bringing forth a new son into this fractured family. Rachel claimed this as a divine victory, naming the boy Dan, meaning vindication. Soon after, Bilhah conceived once more, delivering a second son to Jacob. "I have fought a deadly match with my sister Rachel," declared, naming him Naphtali. Seeing her own fertility stall, Leah retaliated, thrusting her own maid Zilpah into Jacob's arms. Zilpah bore a son, and Leah claimed good fortune had arrived, naming him Gad. When a second son was born to Zilpah, Leah rejoiced, calling herself blessed, and named him Asher. During the wheat harvest, young Reuben found wild mandrakes in the field, plants famed for sparking desire and fertility, and brought them straight to his mother Leah. Desperate for fertility, Rachel begged for those mandrakes. Leah snapped back, asking if stealing her husband wasn't enough, and if she now wanted to rob her of her son's gift too. Rachel proposed a cold transaction, a night in Leah's bed in exchange for the plants. When Jacob returned from the fields, Leah met him, claiming she had rented him for the night. He complied, and they spent the night together. God heard Leah's silent plea, and she conceived her fifth son, declaring it a divine reward for yielding her maidservant to her husband. She named him Issachar. Soon Leah conceived yet again, bearing Jacob a sixth son, praising God for granting her a precious gift, a beautiful spiritual dowry. "Surely my husband will stay with me now," she whispered, naming him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter, whom she named Dinah. Finally, the divine memory turned to Rachel. Her womb opened, and she gave birth to a son, declaring her shame erased. She named him Joseph, praying for another child. After Joseph was born, the urge to return home gripped Jacob. He confronted Laban, demanding to be released so he could return to his homeland. "Give me my wives and children," Jacob demanded. "You know the grueling labor I have performed for you." But Laban, realizing his own wealth had multiplied purely because of Jacob's presence, begged him to stay, desperate to keep that divine favor. "Name your price," Laban offered, "and I will pay it." Jacob replied, reminding him of the tireless years of service and how his livestock had flourished under his careful eye. "Your holdings were tiny before I arrived, but now they have multiplied into vast herds. You were blessed through me. Yet when will I finally build a future for my own family?" "What do you want?" Laban asked. Jacob replied, "Keep your money. Just agree to one condition, and I will continue to guard and feed your vast flocks. Today I will go through all your herds, separating every speckled, spotted, and dark-colored animal. From now on, those irregular, marked beasts will be my only payment, my sole wage. This system will prove my honesty. When you inspect my wages, any goat that is not spotted, or any sheep that is not dark, will be proof of theft on my part." Laban eagerly agreed, confident he was getting the better end of the deal. But that very day, Laban secretly removed all the striped and spotted animals, hiding them with his own sons. He then put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, ensuring no crossbreeding could occur. Undeterred, Jacob tended the remaining flock. He gathered fresh branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees, peeling back the bark to expose stark white stripes. He placed these striped branches directly in the watering troughs where the animals gathered to drink, hoping the visual stimulus would influence their breeding. The strategy worked. The animals bred near the branches and gave birth to striped, speckled, and spotted offspring. Jacob carefully separated these newborns, gradually shifting the herd's genetic makeup. He kept his newly acquired spotted herds strictly separate from Laban's plain livestock. Whenever the robust, healthy animals were breeding, Jacob displayed the striped branches in the troughs. But when the weak mated, he held them back, leaving nature to its plain course. Consequently, the weak animals became Laban's, while the strong belonged to Jacob. His wealth exploded, accumulating massive herds, servants, camels, and donkeys. Finally, he departed. Along his journey, messengers of heaven met him. Recognizing the divine presence, Jacob named the place Mahanaim before sending messengers ahead to face his estranged brother Esau. He instructed them to address Esau with deep humility, saying, "Your servant Jacob has spent these long years residing with Laban and has only now returned. I have acquired oxen, donkeys, flocks, and many servants. I send this message to my master, hoping to find mercy and favor in your eyes." The messengers returned with terrifying news. Esau was marching to meet him, accompanied by 400 men. A cold wave of fear and dread gripped Jacob's heart. In a panic, he split his family herds and camels into 2 separate camps. He calculated that if Esau slaughtered the first group, the remaining half might still escape. He cried out, "God of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, you commanded me to return to my homeland, promising to bless me. Yet I am entirely unworthy of the immense kindness and loyalty you have shown your servant. I crossed this river Jordan with nothing but a walking staff, and now I have grown into 2 massive camps. Save me, I beg you, from the wrath of my brother Esau. I fear he will slaughter us all, sparing neither mothers nor children. Yet you promised to bless me, to make my descendants as countless as the sand on the seashore. Spending the night there, he prepared a massive peace offering for Esau, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 female sheep, and 20 rams, 30 milking camels with their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. He sent the herds ahead, leaving spaces between them. He commanded the leader, "When Esau asks, 'Whose art thou, and where goest thou?' remember, this ancient shadow is the question we all face in the dark. Who do you belong to, and where are you going?" What if your deepest terror is actually yourself when asked who owns these herds? Tell Esau they are a gift from his servant Jacob, who is coming right behind us. He gave this same strict command to every servant driving the herds. When you face Esau, speak these exact words. Tell him over and over, your servant Jacob is coming behind us. Jacob thought, I can quiet his rage with these gifts before we meet face to face. Perhaps then he will forgive me. So the peace offerings went ahead while Jacob stayed behind in the camp. Unable to sleep, Jacob rose in the dark, gathering his 2 wives, 2 maidservants, and 11 sons to cross the Jabbok stream. He sent everything he owned across the water into the shadows. Jacob was left entirely alone in the darkness. Suddenly, a mysterious stranger lunged, wrestling with him until dawn. Realizing he could not defeat Jacob, the figure struck his hip socket. Jacob's hip was dislocated as they struggled. The stranger gasped, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking!" But Jacob held tight, crying, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." The man asked, "What is your name?" He answered Jacob. The stranger replied, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have wrestled with both God and man, and you have overcome." Then Jacob begged him, "Tell me your name, I pray you." But the figure responded, "Why is it that you ask for my name?" He blessed Jacob right there. Jacob named that sacred place Peniel, declaring, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life was spared." As he limped across the river, the morning sun rose upon him. Because of this encounter, the children of Israel still refuse to eat the tendon of the hip socket to this very day, commemorating where the stranger touched Jacob's hip. This struggle began years prior when Jacob heard Laban's sons whispering, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned, building his entire fortune on our family's back." Jacob noticed Laban's attitude had turned cold and hostile. Then the Lord whispered to him, "Return to the land of your fathers and your relatives, and I will be with you." Jacob sent a message calling his wives Rachel and Leah out to the open fields where his flocks grazed. He told them, "Your father no longer looks at me with favor, but my father's God has stood by me. You know I served him with all my strength, yet he cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. Yet God did not let him ruin me. If Laban declared that the speckled animals would be my pay, the flocks birthed speckled young. If he said striped, then all the newborns were born striped. In this way God took the wealth from your father and gave it to me. When the flocks were ready to breed, I lifted my eyes in a dream and saw a vision. The rams mating with the animals were all striped, speckled, and spotted. The angel of God called out to me in that dream, saying, 'Jacob.' I answered, 'Here I am.' The angel said, 'Look up and see. The rams mating with the flocks are striped, speckled, and spotted. I have seen exactly how Laban treats you. I am the God of Bethel, where you poured oil on the pillar and made a vow to me. Now pack your things, leave this country, and return to your homeland.' Rachel and Leah answered, 'Do we have any share or inheritance left in our father's house? To him we are nothing but foreigners. He sold us like property and completely devoured our dowry. Every bit of wealth God took from our father belongs to us and our children. Do whatever God has commanded.' So Jacob got up, placing his children and his wives onto camels. He drove all his livestock ahead of him and gathered all the goods he had acquired in Padanaram. He set out to return to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. While Laban was away shearing sheep, Rachel stole her father's household idols. Jacob deceived Laban the Syrian by fleeing in secret, never uttering a word of his escape. He fled into the night with everything. Crossing the great river, Jacob headed toward the hill country of Gilead. 3 days passed before Laban was finally told that Jacob had fled. Laban gathered his kinsmen and pursued Jacob for 7 long days, finally catching him in the rugged hill country of Gilead. But that night God appeared to Laban in a dream, warning him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, whether good or bad." Laban caught up with Jacob, who had pitched his tent in the hills. Laban and his relatives set up camp nearby in Gilead. Laban demanded, "What have you done? You slipped away secretly and carried my daughters off like captives of war. Why did you run away in the shadows and deceive me? You didn't even give me a chance to send you off with celebration songs and music. You denied me the right to kiss my daughters and grandchildren goodbye. You have acted like a fool. I have the power to destroy you right now. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, warning me not to say anything to you, good or bad. I understand you left because you long for your father's home, but why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered, "I fled because I was terrified. I thought you would take your daughters back from me by sheer force. But if you find your gods with anyone here, they shall die. Search everything in front of our kinsmen, and take what is yours." Jacob had no idea Rachel had stolen them. Laban searched through Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, and the tents of the 2 maidservants, but found nothing. He then entered Rachel's tent. Rachel had quickly hidden the household idols inside a camel saddlebag and sat directly on top of them. Laban searched every corner of the tent but found nothing. She said to her father, "Do not be angry that I cannot stand up before you, for I am having my monthly period." He searched everywhere but found nothing. Now Jacob grew angry and confronted Laban, demanding, "What is my crime? What sin have I committed that you have hunted me down so fiercely? You have ransacked all my belongings. What did you actually find? Put it right here in front of our relatives, and let them judge between us. I served you for 20 years. Your sheep and goats never miscarried, and I never ate your rams. When wild beasts tore your livestock, I did not bring them to you to share the loss. I paid for the loss myself. You demanded payment for every animal stolen by day or night. I worked through scorching heat by day and freezing cold by night, losing sleep to guard your flocks. For 20 years I slaved in your house, 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks. You changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, had not stood by me, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my suffering and hard work, and he rebuked you last night." Laban answered, "These women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. Everything you see is mine. But how could I harm my own daughters and children today, or the children they have brought into the world? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, to stand as a lasting witness between us." Jacob took a large stone and set it up as a sacred pillar. He told his relatives to gather stones, piling them high, and they sat together to eat a meal upon the heap. Laban named this boundary heap Jegar Sahadutha, while Jacob called it Galeed. This monument of peace stands as a witness for them and for us, marking where our own inner warfare finally ends. Why do we build walls against those we claim to love? Laban demands a sacred boundary, warning Jacob, "May the Lord watch between us when we are apart. If you mistreat my daughters, remember, even when no one else is there, God sees. Look, God is the witness between you and me." Laban points to the stones, saying, "Behold this heap, and look at this pillar I have set up as a border between us. Let these stones stand as a silent witness. I will not cross this boundary to harm you, and you must never cross it to hurt me. It is a line drawn in the dirt. May the God of Abraham and the God of Noor, the God of their ancestors, judge between us." And Jacob swore an oath by the fear of his father Isaac. To seal the pact, Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain, inviting his kinsmen to share bread. They ate together and slept that night on the high, silent peak. At dawn, Laban rose, kissed his children, and spoke a blessing over them. Then he turned away, walking back to his own land, leaving them to their destiny. But a greater shadow loomed. Jacob looked up and saw Esau approaching with 400 men. In sudden terror, he divided his children among his wives and maidservants. He shielded those he loved most, putting the maidservants first, Leah next, and Rachel in the rear. Stepping ahead, he bowed to the earth 7 times, slowly, approaching the brother he had once betrayed. But Esau ran to meet him, throwing his arms around his neck, kissing him, and they both wept. Looking up, Esau saw the women and children and asked, "Who are these with you?" Jacob replied, "The children God has graciously given to your servant." One by one, the maidservants and their children stepped forward and bowed. Leah and her children did the same, followed finally by Joseph and Rachel, bowing in deep respect. Esau then asked, "What is the meaning of all these herds I met on my way?" Jacob answered, "They are gifts to win your favor." But Esau insisted, "I have plenty. Keep what is yours." But Jacob urged him, "No, please. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this offering from my hands. For seeing your face is like seeing the face of God now that you have welcomed me. Please take this blessing, for God has been incredibly generous, and I have more than enough," Jacob insisted, until Esau finally accepted. Esau then suggested they travel together, but Jacob hesitated, saying, "My Lord knows the children are frail, and my nursing flocks must travel slowly. If they are driven too hard for even one day, the entire flock will die. Go ahead of me, and I will travel slowly, pacing myself with the livestock and children until I reach you in Seir." Esau then offered to leave some of his men behind to protect them, but Jacob asked, "Why do that? Just let me find favor in your eyes." So Esau set out for Seir, while Jacob journeyed to Succoth, where he built a house and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. Jacob arrived safely at Shechem in Canaan, pitching his tents outside the city gates. He bought the land from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver. There he built an altar, naming it Alo Israel. Then tragedy struck. Dinah, Jacob's daughter, went to visit the local women. Shechem, the prince of that land, saw her, took her by force, and defiled her. Yet his heart became deeply attached to her. He loved the young woman, speaking tenderly to her. He begged his father Hamor, "Get me this girl to be my wife." When Jacob heard his daughter had been defiled, his sons were out in the fields with the cattle. So he kept silent until they returned. Hamor, Shechem's father, went to speak with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons rushed back from the fields filled with grief and rage when they heard what happened. The brothers were heartbroken and furious, because sleeping with Jacob's daughter was an absolute outrage that should never be done. Yet Hamor pleaded with them, saying, "My son Shechem is deeply in love with her. I beg you give her to him as a wife. Let us intermarry, sharing our daughters and living together in peace. The entire land lies open before you to settle. Settle here, trade freely, and acquire property." Shechem then pleaded with Dinah's father and brothers, "Let me find favor with you. Name your price, and I will pay it. Ask for any amount of bride price or gifts, and I will pay whatever you demand. Just let me marry her." But Jacob's sons replied with deceit, harboring fury over their defiled sister. They told them, "We cannot possibly give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will only agree to this if every male among you is circumcised, just as we are. Only then will we give you our daughters." We will then take your daughters for ourselves, live alongside you, and we will become one single people. But if you refuse to be circumcised, we will take our sister and leave." This proposal seemed perfectly reasonable to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man did not hesitate to do it, so deeply was he in love with Jacob's daughter. He was highly respected in his household. Hamor and Shechem went to the city gates to persuade their fellow citizens, saying, "These men are peaceful. Let them live in our land and trade with us. There is plenty of land for all of us. We can marry their daughters and give them ours, but they will only agree to become one people with us on one condition. If every male among us is circumcised like them, won't all their herds, wealth, and animals eventually become ours? We just need to agree. If we simply agree, they will dwell with us." All the citizens of the town listened to Hamor and Shechem, and every single male was circumcised that day. On the third day, while the men were still in pain, Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, took their swords, entered the unsuspecting city, and slaughtered every male. They put Hamor and Shechem to the sword, rescued Dinah from Shechem's house, and left. The other brothers then plundered the city because their sister had been defiled. They seized their sheep, oxen, and donkeys, taking everything from the city and the fields, capturing all their wealth, and carrying away their children. They took the women captive and plundered the homes. Distressed, Jacob confronted Simeon and Levi with grave concern. "You have brought ruin on me, making me a target for the Canaanites and Perizzites. We are so few in number. If they band together against me, my entire household will be wiped out." But they replied, "Should we let him treat our sister like a common prostitute?" Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. Why do we carry the very things that secretly destroy us?" Jacob turned to his family and demanded they bury their foreign gods, wash away their past, change their soiled clothes, and rise to journey toward Bethel. There he would build a sacred altar to God, the one who answered him during his darkest moments and guided his steps. Yielding to his plea, they surrendered their false idols and heavy gold earrings. Jacob buried these symbols of their old lives deep beneath the ancient oak tree at Shechem. As they traveled, a paralyzing dread gripped the surrounding cities. No one dared to hunt down or attack the sons of Jacob. Finally, Jacob and his entire company reached Luz, the ancient Canaanite town now known as Bethel. He built an altar there, naming the sacred ground El Bethel, remembering the divine presence that found him when he was running for his life from his angry brother. Then Rebekah's beloved nurse Deborah died. They buried her beneath Bethel, under an oak tree they named the Oak of Weeping. There God met Jacob once more on his return from Padan Aram, speaking a blessing over him. The divine voice declared, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called the deceiver. Your new name is Israel." From that moment, his identity shifted. Then God spoke, "I am the Almighty. Grow, expand, and flourish. A great nation and a community of empires will rise from your bloodline, and kings will be born from you. The very land I promised to Abraham and Isaac is now yours, and your descendants will inherit it." Then the divine presence vanished from the place of their encounter. To mark this holy ground, Jacob raised a stone monument. He poured out a sacred drink offering and anointed the pillar with oil to seal the moment. Jacob named this thin place where the divine spoke to him Bethel. Moving on from Bethel, they were just a short distance from Ephrath when Rachel went into a sudden, agonizing labor. In the midst of her pain, the midwife whispered to her, "Do not fear. You will have this son too." But as her life slipped away and she drew her final breath, she named her newborn baby Benoni, but Jacob called him Benjamin. Rachel died right there and was laid to rest on the road to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Jacob built a headstone over her grave. marking the spot for generations to come. Pressing onward, Israel pitched his tents past the Tower of Eder. But while they stayed there, his eldest son, Reuben, committed a dark betrayal, sleeping with his father's concubine, Bilhah. Word of this betrayal reached Israel. Now the sons of Jacob numbered 12. Leah bore Reuben the firstborn, along with Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel bore him Joseph and Benjamin. Bilhah, Rachel's servant, gave him Dan and Naphtali. Zilpah, Leah's servant, bore him Gad and Asher. These 12 sons were born to Jacob during his long years in Padan Aram. At last Jacob returned home to his aging father Isaac at Mamre, near Hebron, the ancient land where Abraham once lived. Isaac lived to the ripe age of 180. Then Isaac breathed his last. He died at a very old age, fully satisfied with life, and was gathered to his ancestors. His rival sons, Esau and Jacob, came together to bury him. This is the lineage of Esau, also known as Edom, who married women from Canaan. His wives were Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite, Oholibamah, granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Basemath, Ishmael's daughter and sister of Nebaioth. Adah gave birth to Esau's firstborn Eliphaz. Basemath bore Ruel, while Oholibamah gave birth to Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These sons were all born to Esau while he still lived in Canaan. Soon after Esau gathered his wives, his children, his entire household, his massive herds, and all the wealth he had built up in Canaan, and moved to another land, far away from his brother Jacob. Their combined wealth and livestock had grown too massive for them to share the same valley. The pastures of their temporary home simply could not support both of their massive herds. So Esau settled in the rugged hill country of Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. This is the history of Esau, the founding father of the Edomites in Seir. These are the names of his sons. Eliphaz, born to Esau's wife Adah. Ruel was the son of his wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Eliphaz also had a concubine named Timnah, who gave birth to Amalek. These were the descendants of Adah. Meanwhile, Ruel's sons were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah, the descendants of Basemath. And Oholibamah, daughter of Anah and granddaughter of Zibeon, also bore sons. She gave birth to Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These men became the powerful chieftains of Esau's line. From his firstborn Eliphaz came the clans of Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. These were the tribal leaders who ruled the dry lands of Edom. These were the descendants of Adah. From Esau's son Ruel came the chieftains Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These were the leaders of the rural clans in Edom. These were the sons of Basemath. From his wife Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah, came the chieftains Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These men ruled the clans born of her union with Esau. These were the sons of Esau, the father of Edom, and these were their leaders. They shared the rugged territory with the native sons of Seir, the Horite, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan. These were the original Horite chiefs, the ancient sons of Seir who ruled Edom. Lotan's sons were Hori and Hemam, and his sister was Timnah. Shobal's descendants were Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepo, and Onam. Zibeon's sons were Aya and Anah, who lived in these wild lands. This was the very Anah who discovered the hot springs in the desert while pasturing his father's donkeys. Anah's children were Dishon and his daughter Oholibamah. Dishon's sons were Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Karan. Azer's sons were Bilhan, Zavan, and Akan. The sons of Dishon were Uz and Aran, who carried on their family lines. These were the tribal chiefs of the Horites, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishan, Ezer, and Dishan. They ruled their clans in order, establishing their families across the ancient lands of Seir. Long before any king ever ruled over the people of Israel, these sovereign monarchs held power in the dry lands of Edom. Bela, the son of Beor, reigned first. He ruled from his capital of Dinhaba. When Bela died, Jobab, son of Zerah from Bozrah, took his place. After Jobab passed, Husham from the land of the Temanites succeeded him. When Husham died, Hadad, son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in Moab, became king, ruling from the city of Avith. After Hadad died, Samlah of Masrekah succeeded him to the throne. When Samlah passed away, Shaul from Rehoboth on the river ruled. After Shaul died, Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor, took his place. When Baal-Hanan died, Hadar succeeded him as king. He ruled from the city of Pau, and his wife was Mehetabel, granddaughter of Mezahab. These are the names of the tribal leaders who descended from Esau, organized by their families, territories, and historical names. Chieftains: Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Oholibama, Elah, Pinyon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Iram, who all ruled their respective territories. These were the ruling chiefs of Edom, settled in their ancestral lands. This was Esau, father of the Edomite nation. Meanwhile, Jacob settled quietly in Canaan, the very land where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the legacy of Jacob. His 17-year-old son Joseph watched the flocks with his half-brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. An innocent boy, on the brink of his own deep exile. Joseph brought his father a dark report of his brother's hidden sins. Jacob loved Joseph best, the child of his fading years, gifting him a magnificent, fateful coat of many colors. Seeing this blatant favoritism, his brothers hated him, unable to offer even a kind word of peace. Then Joseph had a vivid dream. He shared it with them, and their burning resentment grew even deeper. He said, "Listen closely to this vision that came to me. We were out in the field, binding sheaves of wheat together. Suddenly my bundle stood upright, while your sheaves gathered in a circle, bowing down to mine." His brothers sneered in anger. "Do you really think you will rule over us? Will you actually become our master?" They despised him even more for his dreams and his words. Yet soon another vision came to him. "Look," he said, "I dreamed that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were all bowing down to me." When he told his father and brothers, even Jacob rebuked him. "What kind of foolish dream is this that you have dreamed?" his father demanded. "Will your mother, your brothers, and I really bow to the earth before you?" His brothers burned with jealousy, but Jacob quietly remembered the warning. Soon the brothers left to pasture the flocks in Shechem. Jacob said to Joseph, "Aren't your brothers tending the sheep in Shechem? I am going to send you to them." "I am ready," Joseph replied. Jacob told him, "Go now, see how your brothers and the flocks are doing, and bring back word to me." So he left the valley of Hebron for Shechem. There, a stranger found him wandering aimlessly in the open fields. The man asked, "What are you looking for?" Joseph answered, "I am searching for my brothers. Please, can you tell me where they are grazing their sheep?" The stranger replied, "They have moved on from here. I heard them say they were heading to Dothan." So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. But when they saw him approaching from a distance, before he could even reach them, they plotted to murder him. "Look," they whispered to each other, "here comes the dreamer. Let us kill him now, throw him into a pit, and tell everyone a wild animal devoured him. Then we will see what becomes of his precious dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him. "Let us not take his life," he urged. "Let us shed no blood. Throw him into this dry wilderness pit instead, but do not harm him." Reuben planned to rescue him later and return him to Jacob. When Joseph finally reached his brothers, they instantly stripped off his coat, that hated, colorful coat. They seized him and threw him deep into the pit, which was dark, dry, and empty of water. Then they sat down to eat bread. Glancing up, they saw something on the horizon. A caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh for Egypt. Judah turned to his brothers and asked, "What do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Let us sell him to these traders instead. Let us not be the ones to kill him, since he is our own flesh and blood." And his brothers agreed. When Midianites merchants passed by, the brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph was taken to Egypt. Later, Reuben returned to the empty pit. Seeing Joseph was gone, Reuben tore his clothes in grief. He ran back to his brothers crying, "The boy is not there! What am I going to do now?" They slaughtered a young goat and dipped Joseph's beautiful coat in its blood. They brought the blood-stained coat of many colors to their father, telling him, "We found this in the wild. See if this is your son's coat," they said. Jacob recognized it instantly. "It is my son's coat. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes in agony, dressed in rough sackcloth, and mourned his son for many long days. All his children gathered to comfort him, but he refused their consolation. Weeping, "I will go down to the grave still mourning for my lost son." While his father wept, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Around that time, Judah chose to leave his brothers, staying instead with a certain Adulamite named Hira. It was there that Judah met and saw the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her, and she gave birth to 3 sons. The first they named Ir, the second was named Onan, and she conceived once more to bear a 3rd son, naming him Shelah. Judah was at Chizib when she gave birth. Years later, Judah chose a wife named Tamar for his firstborn Ir. But Ir was wicked in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Judah then told Onan, "Marry your brother's widow to carry on his line." But Onan knew any child born would not truly belong to him. Whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he deliberately wasted his seed on the ground so as not to give his brother an heir. This act displeased the Lord, who took his life as well. Judah then told his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's home until my youngest Shelah grows up." Judah feared that Shelah might also die like his brothers. So Tamar returned to live in her father's house. Years passed, and eventually Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. After his time of mourning, Judah went up to Timnath to shear his sheep. He traveled with his friend Hira, the Adulamite. Soon Tamar was told that her father-in-law was heading to Timnath for the sheep shearing. She took off her widow's clothes, covered her face with a veil to disguise herself, and sat by the roadside leading to Timnath. She saw that Shelah was now grown, yet she still had not been given to him. When Judah saw her, he assumed she was a temple harlot because her face was covered. He pulled over to the roadside and said, "Let me come in to you." Completely unaware she was his own daughter-in-law, she asked, "What will you give me to sleep with you?" "I will send you a young goat from my flock," he promised. She replied, "Will you give me a pledge until you send it?" He asked, "What pledge should I give you?" She answered, "Your signet ring, your bracelets, and the staff you are holding." He gave them to her and slept with her, and she conceived. Afterward she got up, left, took off her veil, and put her widow's clothes back on. Judah sent the young goat with the hand of his friend, the Adulamite, to recover his personal pledge, but he could not find her. He then asked the local people, saying, "Where is the harlot who was sitting openly by the roadside?" They replied, "There has never been a harlot here." He returned to Judah and said, "I could not find her. Even the local men insisted there was no harlot in that place." Judah said, "Let her keep the items, lest we face public shame. I sent this goat, but you could not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has acted as a harlot, and now she is pregnant from her shame." Judah ordered, "Bring her out and let her be burned to death." As she was being led out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. "I am pregnant by the man who owns these," she said. "Look closely whose signet ring, bracelets, and staff are these." Judah recognized them. "She is more righteous than I am," he admitted, "because I failed to give her to my son Schiller. He was never intimate with her again. And when her time came, she gave birth to twins." Why do we fight so hard to be first? As the ancient mother labored, a tiny hand emerged from the dark, and the midwife tied a scarlet thread, marking him as firstborn. But the hand retreated, and his brother burst forward, claiming the birthright. The midwife gasped, "What a breach you have made!" And so they named him Perez, the one who broke through. Only then did the brother with the scarlet thread emerge, named Zara. Meanwhile, far from this strange birth, Joseph was dragged down to Egypt, sold to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. This powerful Egyptian bought the young captive from the desert merchants. Yet even in exile, a divine presence walked with Joseph, bringing success to everything he touched within his master's grand estate. Potiphar watched this foreign slave, realizing some unseen force blessed everything Joseph did. Winning his master's deep trust, Joseph was elevated from a simple servant to the chief overseer of the entire household. Every possession was placed under Joseph's absolute control. From that exact moment, the shadow of blessing stretched over the Egyptian's home, thriving purely because of the presence of this single Hebrew captive. This invisible favor saturated everything Potiphar owned, from the quiet halls of his estate to the fertile fields outside. The master surrendered all worries, caring only about the food served at his table. Meanwhile, Joseph grew into a strikingly handsome young man, possessing both grace and an undeniable presence. Inevitably, temptation arrived in the dark. His master's wife fixed her eyes on Joseph's beauty, cornering him with a quiet, dangerous command, "Sleep with me." But Joseph stood firm against her, saying, "Look, my master trusts me completely. He does not even check on what is in this house because he put everything under my command. No one here holds more power than I do, and he has withheld nothing from me, except you, his wife. How could I commit such a terrible betrayal and sin against my Creator, even as she cornered him day after day, whispering her relentless desires?" Joseph refused to lie with her or even stay in her presence. Then came the trap. Joseph entered the quiet house alone to perform his daily duties, unaware the hallways were empty. She lunged, grabbing his cloak tightly, and demanded once more, "Sleep with me." Tearing himself away, he left his cloak in her grasp and bolted out of the house. Spurned and holding his garment, she let out a furious cry, summoning the servants to craft her lie. "Look!" she screamed. "He brought this Hebrew here to humiliate us." He forced his way into my room to assault me, but I screamed as loud as I could. The moment he heard me raise my voice and scream, he panicked, left his cloak behind, and fled the house. She kept the stolen garment beside her, awaiting trap until her husband returned home. Then she spun the same vicious lie, telling him, "That Hebrew slave you brought to us tried to humiliate me." As soon as I started screaming for help, he panicked, left his cloak right here, and escaped into the night. When the master heard his wife's convincing testimony about how his trusted overseer had supposedly treated her, his fury was immediately ignited into a dark, consuming fire. Potiphar seized Joseph and threw him deep into the royal prison where the king's captives were bound. Yet even in the blackness of that dungeon, the divine presence remained, granting Joseph grace and favor with the prison warden. Soon the warden placed every single inmate in the facility under Joseph's direct supervision and care. He became the driving force behind everything that happened inside those walls. The warden never had to double-check Joseph's work because a higher power blessed every single task the young man managed. Sometime later, two of Pharaoh's personal court officers, the chief cupbearer and the royal baker, committed a grave offense against the king of Egypt. Furious at his two high-ranking court officials, the angry monarch ordered both the chief cupbearer and the chief baker to be locked away. They were thrown into custody within the fortress prison, where Joseph was currently confined. The captain of the guard assigned Joseph to look after them. He attended to their needs as they remained imprisoned for a long time. Then, on a single fateful night, both of the captive officers experienced a vivid, haunting dream. Each dream carried its own distinct and mysterious meaning, weighing heavily on the minds of the cupbearer and the baker. When Joseph checked on them the following morning, he immediately noticed their pale, troubled expressions. He asked Pharaoh's imprisoned officials, "Why do you look so deeply burdened and downcast on this morning?" "We both had intense dreams," they replied, "but there is no one here to explain them." Joseph looked at them and said, "Does not the revealing of mysteries belong to God? Tell me what you saw." So the chief cupbearer shared his vision first. "In my dream, a great grapevine appeared right before me, and on this vine grew 3 distinct branches. Suddenly it began to bud, blossoms burst open, and heavy clusters of grapes ripened instantly. I was holding Pharaoh's royal cup. So I took the fresh grapes, squeezed their juice into it, and placed the vessel back into the king's hand." Joseph replied, "This is what your dream means. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Before those 3 days are over, Pharaoh will pardon you and restore you to your former position. You will hand Pharaoh his cup, just as you used to do when you served him. But please remember me when things go well for you, and show me some mercy. Speak of my plight directly to Pharaoh himself, and help get me out of this prison. I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done absolutely nothing to deserve this dark dungeon." Hearing this hopeful interpretation, the chief baker eagerly spoke up. "In my dream, I was carrying 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but flocking birds kept eating them right out of the basket." Joseph answered solemnly, "This is the meaning of your dream. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. But in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head by decapitating you. He will hang your body on a pole, and the wild birds will strip the flesh from your bones." 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, the king held a massive feast for his entire court. He summoned both the chief cupbearer and the chief baker from the depths of the prison, restoring the cupbearer to his prestigious office. The cupbearer placed the goblet back into Pharaoh's hand, while the chief baker was executed, just as Joseph had warned. Yet the restored cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He completely forgot him. 2 full years slowly passed. Then Pharaoh had a dream where he stood along the banks of the Nile. Suddenly 7 beautiful, sleek, and fat cows emerged from the water, grazing peacefully in the lush reeds. Behind them, another 7 cows rose out of the river, but these were hideous, bony, and thin. They came and stood right next to the healthy cows on the muddy bank. Then the ugly, starving cows devoured the 7 fat, healthy ones, and Pharaoh woke up, startled. Falling back asleep, he dreamed again. 7 plump, ripe heads of grain grew healthy and strong on a single stalk. Immediately after, 7 thin, scorched ears of grain sprouted, withered by the harsh desert wind. These starved ears swallowed up the healthy ones. Then Pharaoh woke up, fully realizing it was all a dream. When morning arrived, Pharaoh was deeply shaken. He summoned all the high magicians and wise scholars of Egypt, recounting his visions to them. Yet not a single expert could unravel the mystery of the king's dreams. Finally, the chief cupbearer spoke to the king. "Today I must confess my failure. Some time ago, Pharaoh was furious with his servants and locked me and the chief baker inside the house of the captain. While imprisoned there, we both had dreams on the very same night. Each dream we experienced carried its own unique, haunting significance. A young Hebrew slave who served the captain of the guard was there with us. We described our visions to him, and he perfectly unraveled the meaning of each of our individual dreams. It happened exactly as the prisoner predicted. One man was restored to power, the other was executed. Suddenly Pharaoh ordered Joseph to be summoned, dragging him from the pitch-black dungeon into the blazing light. He shaved away the filth of the pit, changed his clothes, and stood before the king. Pharaoh looked at him and said, "I had a dream, and not a single soul can explain it." "They say you have the power to understand and decode dreams," but Joseph replied, "The power is not mine. It is God who will give Pharaoh the peaceful answer he seeks." Pharaoh spoke, saying, "In my dream I was standing on the banks of the great river. Suddenly, 7 fat, healthy cows rose from the water, feeding peacefully in the lush meadows. Then 7 other beasts emerged behind them, starved, hideous, and horribly gaunt. I have never seen such miserable, ugly creatures in all of Egypt. And these wretched skeletal beasts actually devoured the 7 healthy ones. Yet even after eating them, you could not tell they had eaten anything. They remained as starved and wretched as before. Then I awoke only to dream again of 7 healthy ears of grain on a single stalk. Right after them 7 withered, wind-blasted ears of grain sprouted from the earth. And these thin, ruined ears completely swallowed up the 7 healthy golden ones. I told this to all my magicians, but none could explain it. Then Joseph spoke, "Pharaoh, both of your dreams mean the same thing. God is showing you what is about to happen. The 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy ears represent 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 gaunt beasts and the 7 hollow wind-blasted ears represent 7 years of devastating famine that will follow. This is exactly what I am warning you about." God is revealing his plans to Pharaoh. First, there will be 7 years of incredible abundance across the entire land of Egypt. But immediately after 7 years of harsh famine will strike. The suffering will be so severe that all the previous abundance will be completely forgotten. The famine will ravage the country, erasing every memory of prosperity. The disaster will be deeply agonizing. The fact that the dream was sent twice means its fate is entirely sealed. This warning comes directly from God, and he will make it happen very soon. Therefore, Pharaoh must find a wise, discerning leader and place him in charge of Egypt, appointing administrators across the realm. They must collect 1/5 of all the crops harvested during the 7 years of abundance gathering and stockpiling every scrap of food from the coming bountiful seasons. Store this grain securely under Pharaoh's authority, keeping vital food reserves in every city. This stockpile will save the nation from starvation when the 7 years of famine strike, keeping your people alive. This wise plan pleased Pharaoh and all his advisors. The king turned to his court and asked, "Where else could we find a man like this? Someone filled with the very Spirit of God." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed all of this to you, no one is wiser or more discerning. You will run my palace, and my entire nation will obey your commands. Only I, on my throne, will hold more power than you." Pharaoh then declared to Joseph, "Look, I am officially placing you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." Pharaoh removed his royal signet ring and placed it on Joseph's finger, dressing him in robes of fine linen and hanging a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the royal chariot as heralds shouted, "Bow the knee." With that, Joseph became ruler of all Egypt. Pharaoh said to him, "I am the king, but from this day on, no one in this land will lift a hand or foot without your permission." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zapnath-Paneah and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Phyphera, priest of An, to be his wife. And Joseph set out to travel across the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he began serving the king of Egypt. He left Pharaoh's presence to travel the country. During those 7 years of abundance, the land produced massive, overflowing harvests. He collected all the excess food produced during those 7 bountiful years in Egypt, storing it safely inside the cities. In every single town, he stockpiled the crops harvested from the surrounding fields. He piled up grain like the endless sand of the seashore, gathering so much that he finally stopped keeping count. Before the years of starvation began, Asenath, the daughter of the priest, bore Joseph 2 sons. Joseph named his firstborn son Manasseh, marking a new chapter in his life. For he said, "God has made me forget all my troubles and my father's household." He named the second son Ephraim, saying, "God has made me incredibly fertile in this land of my suffering." Finally, the 7 years of absolute abundance in Egypt came to an end. Just as Joseph had predicted, the 7 years of global famine began, and the dry ground turned to dust. Yet throughout Egypt there was food. When hunger eventually gripped the citizens, they cried out to Pharaoh for help. Pharaoh simply told them, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you to do." The famine slowly tightened its grip across the entire world. Joseph opened up the massive storehouses and began selling grain to the Egyptians as the starvation grew worse each day. People from every surrounding nation traveled to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the devastating famine had crippled the entire known world. When Jacob learned there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you all just standing there looking at each other? I hear there is food in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so we do not starve to death." So 10 of Joseph's brothers set out for Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob kept Joseph's younger brother Benjamin safe at home, fearing some terrible accident might happen to him. Along with thousands of others, the sons of Israel arrived to buy food. The famine was ravaging Canaan, and Joseph was now the supreme governor in charge of Egypt. He was the one overseeing the grain sales to everyone. When Joseph's brothers finally arrived, they fell to the ground, bowing deeply before him with their faces in the dust. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he hid his identity, speaking harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he demanded. They replied, "From Canaan to buy food." He knew exactly who they were, but they had no idea. Joseph instantly remembered the childhood dreams he had about them. He accused them, saying, "You are nothing but spies. You have come here to find our country's weak spots." "No, my lord," they pleaded. "Your servants only came to buy food. We are all sons of the same father, honest men. We are not spies." But Joseph insisted, "No, you have come to scout our defenses." They replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers from Canaan. The youngest is currently back home with our father, and one of our brothers is no longer with us." Joseph snapped back, "It is just as I said, you are spies. Now, by the life of Pharaoh, your story will be put to the test. You will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you to go fetch him while the rest of you rot in prison. This will prove if you are telling the truth. Otherwise, by the life of Pharaoh, you are definitely spies." He threw them in prison for 3 days, then told them, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain locked up here. The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving families, but you must bring your youngest brother back to me. That is how you will prove your innocence and stay alive." They agreed, whispering to each other, "We are finally paying for what we did to our brother. We saw his sheer terror when he begged us for mercy, but we refused to listen. That is why this nightmare has found us." Reuben turned to them and said, "Did I not warn you back then? I told you not to hurt the boy, but you refused to listen. Now our past has caught up to us. His blood is demanded." They had no idea Joseph understood their internal torment, speaking only through a translator. Overwhelmed by their guilt, Joseph stepped away to weep in secret. Returning, cold and composed, he took Simeon and had him bound right before their eyes. Then Joseph secretly ordered their bags filled with grain, slipping their money back inside, along with supplies for their journey. They loaded their donkeys and departed into the desert, unaware of the trap of grace. But when they stopped at an inn, one brother opened his sack to feed his donkey. He froze. Right there at the top, his silver stared back at him. "Look, my money has been returned," he cried out to the others. "It is right here in my bag." Their hearts sank in sheer terror, and they whispered to one another, "What is God doing to us?" When they returned to their father Jacob in Canaan, they recounted their terrifying journey. "The ruler of that land spoke harshly to us," they explained, "treating us with deep suspicion. He accused us of being spies, but we insisted we were honest men, not agents. We told him we were 12 brothers. One is gone, and the youngest remains today with our father in Canaan. Then the ruler of that country told us, 'This is how I will test your honesty. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take grain for your starving families, and bring your youngest brother back to me. Only then will I know you are honest men, and not spies. I will return your brother to you, and you will be free to trade in this land.'" But as they emptied their sacks, a chilling discovery awaited them. Every single man found his pouch of silver hidden inside. Seeing this, both the sons and their father were struck with dread. Jacob cried out in despair, "You are robbing me of my children. Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin? Everything is turning against me." Reuben tried to reassure him, saying, "Kill my own 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Trust him to me." But Jacob refused. "My son will not go with you. His brother is dead, and he is all I have left. If any harm comes to him on this journey, your grief will send my gray head to the grave." Meanwhile, the severe famine continued to tighten its grip on the land. When the grain they brought from Egypt was completely gone, their father finally broke the silence. "Go back," he urged them, "and buy us a little more food." But Judah confronted him, reminding him of the harsh reality. "That man warned us we would never see his face again unless our brother was with us. If you send Benjamin, only then can we go. If you refuse to send him, we cannot go." The man was absolutely clear. "Do not show your faces here without your brother." Jacob cried out, "Why did you bring this misery on me? By telling him you had another brother." They replied, "The man questioned us intensely about our family, asking if our father was still alive. He demanded to know if we had another brother. We simply answered his questions. How could we possibly know he would demand that we bring him down?" Then Judah pleaded with his father Jacob, "Send the boy with me. Let us go so we may live, and not starve to death, we, you, and our children. I personally guarantee his safety. Hold me responsible for his life. If I do not bring him back to stand before you, let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we could have returned twice by now." Their father finally relented. "If it must be so, then do this. Pack the finest products of our land in your bags as a gift for the man balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachios, and almonds. And take double the amount of silver with you. Return the silver that was put back in your sacks. Perhaps it was just an oversight. Take your brother Benjamin, stand up, and go back to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before that ruler, so he will release Simeon and let Benjamin return with you. If I lose my children, I lose them." So the brothers took the gifts, the double silver and Benjamin. They traveled back down to Egypt and stood once more before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin among them, he ordered his chief steward, "Take these men to my house and prepare a grand feast. They will dine with me at noon." The steward did as he was told. But as they were led into the private estate of the ruler, terror gripped them. They feared the luxurious house was a trap. They whispered, "They are bringing us here because of the silver returned in our sacks. They want to accuse us, to seize our donkeys, and force us all into slavery." Terrified, they approached Joseph's chief steward at the entrance. Speaking to him at the doorway, they pleaded, "Please, sir, we came here the first time with honest intentions, only to buy food for our families. But when we stopped at an inn and opened our bags, we found our silver fully paid sitting right at the top. We have brought all that returned money back to you, along with extra silver to buy more food." We swear we have no idea who put that money back in our sacks." But the steward calmed them. "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, must have put that treasure in your sacks." "I received your silver in full," he said. Then he brought Simeon out to them. The steward welcomed them inside, offered water to wash their feet, and fed their donkeys. They carefully arranged their gifts, waiting for Joseph to arrive at noon, having heard they were invited to dine with him. When Joseph entered, they presented their gifts and bowed low to the very ground. He asked how they had been, and then inquired with quiet intensity, "Is your father well? Is the old man you spoke of still alive?" "Your servant our father is in good health and still alive," they answered, bowing deeply once more to show him honor. Looking up, Joseph finally saw Benjamin, his own mother's son. "Is this your youngest brother?" he asked, whispering. "God be gracious to you, my son." Overcome with deep emotion, Joseph rushed out, searching for a place to weep in private. He locked himself in his chamber and wept bitterly. Afterward, he washed his face, regained his composure, and stepped back out, commanding, "Serve the food." They served Joseph at his own table, his brothers at another, and the Egyptians separately. To the local Egyptians, sharing a meal with these Hebrew travelers was a deeply offensive custom, an absolute cultural taboo. They were seated before him in perfect order of their age, from the oldest to the youngest. The brothers stared at each other in absolute wonder. Then Joseph sent portions of food from his own table to theirs. But Benjamin was given 5 times as much food as anyone else. Together, they drank and feasted with the ruler. Joseph then quietly ordered his steward, "Fill their bags with as much grain as they can carry. Put their silver back inside, and then take my cup. Place my silver cup into the sack of the youngest brother, along with his money." The steward obeyed, and at the first light of dawn, the brothers were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had barely left the city gates when Joseph told his steward, "Ride out, now, chase after those men, and when you catch up with them, confront them. Ask them, 'Why have you repaid kindness with evil? Is this not the silver cup my master drinks from, the one he uses to divine secrets? You have committed a terrible crime.'" He overtook them and delivered these exact words. Shocked, the brothers protested, "Why would my lord accuse us of this? May God forbid that we should ever commit such a crime when we have fought so hard to escape our past." How does an ancient story of hidden treasure expose the darkest secrets of the human psyche? Look at these desperate brothers returning the silver found in their sacks to prove their innocence. Why would they steal from your master now? "If any of us has the cup, let him die, and the rest will be slaves." The steward agrees, but with a chilling twist. "Only the thief will become a slave. The rest of you can go free untouched." In a panic, they throw their sacks down and rip them open. The search begins with the oldest brother and ends with the youngest. And there, in Benjamin's bag, the silver cup gleams. They tear their clothes in absolute grief, reload their donkeys, and head back. Judah and his brothers return to Joseph's house, collapsing before him on the floor in total despair. Joseph confronts them. "What have you done? Did you really think a powerful ruler like me could not uncover your secrets?" Judah steps forward. "What can we say? How do we plead our innocence? God is finally punishing us for the deep-buried sins of our past. Take us all as your slaves, both us and the one with the cup." But Joseph refuses. "No, only the man caught with the cup will stay. The rest of you are free to return home to your father in peace." Then Judah draws close. "Please, my lord, let your servant speak just one word to you. Do not be angry with me, even though you hold the absolute power of Pharaoh himself. You asked us before if we had a father or a brother, and we told you we have an elderly father and a young brother born to him in his old age. His full brother is dead, leaving this boy as the last child of his mother, and his father loves him deeply. But you insisted we bring him down so you could see him. We warned you the boy could not leave his father, or the old man would die of grief. Yet you told us we would never see your face again without our youngest brother. So we returned to our father and repeated your strict warning. When our supplies ran low, our father told us to head back to Egypt and buy just a little more food. But we refused, saying we could not return unless our youngest brother was with us. We literally could not face the ruler of Egypt without Benjamin by our side. Our father wept, reminding us that his wife bore him 2 sons. One went out into the wild and never returned, torn to pieces, lost to him forever. If you take this boy too, and harm comes to him, you will send an old grieving man to his grave in utter despair. So now if I go back to my father without the boy whose life is completely bound to his the moment he realizes Benjamin is gone, he will die of heartbreak. We would be directly responsible for killing our own elderly father with sorrow. I personally guaranteed the boy's safety, promising my father I would bear the heavy blame forever if I failed to return him. So please let me stay here as your slave instead of the boy. Let him return home with his brothers, I beg of you. How can I face my father without the boy? I cannot bear to watch his destruction. Hearing this, Joseph could no longer control his overwhelming emotions before his court. He wept aloud, commanding everyone else to leave the room. Alone with his brothers, Joseph finally revealed his true identity, crying so loudly that the Egyptian royal house heard it. Joseph looked at them and said, "I am Joseph. Is my father really still alive?" His brothers stood frozen in absolute terror, unable to speak. "Come closer," Joseph urged gently. As they stepped forward, he said, "I am Joseph, the very brother you sold into slavery. Please do not grieve and do not blame yourselves for selling me. God sent me ahead to save lives. We have suffered 2 years of famine, but there are 5 more years without any harvest. God sent me ahead to preserve our family line on the earth, ensuring your survival through an extraordinary act of deliverance. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a trusted advisor to Pharaoh, lord of his household and ruler over all of Egypt. Hurry back to my father and tell him this is what your son Joseph says: God has made me ruler over the entire land of Egypt. Come down to me immediately. You will live in the fertile land of Goshen, close to me, with your children, your grandchildren, your livestock, and everything you own. I will provide for you. There are still 5 years of famine left, and I want to save your household from ruin. You and my brother Benjamin can see with your own eyes that I am truly speaking to you. Tell my father of the honor I hold in Egypt and everything you have witnessed. Hurry and bring my father down to me." Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and Benjamin wept too. He kissed each of his brothers, and finally they began to speak. Word quickly reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had arrived. Pharaoh and his court were pleased. He told Joseph to instruct his brothers to load up their pack animals, return to the land of Canaan, collect their father and families, and bring them back here. I will give them the absolute best of Egypt to live on. Take transport wagons from Egypt for your wives and children, bring your father, and come. Do not worry about leaving your possessions behind, for the finest things in Egypt are yours." The sons of Israel agreed. Joseph provided the wagons as Pharaoh ordered, along with plenty of food and supplies for their long journey back. He gave them all new clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 outfits. He also sent his father 10 male donkeys loaded with Egypt's finest treasures and 10 female donkeys packed with grain and bread. As his brothers departed, Joseph gave them one last warning: do not argue on the road. They left Egypt and traveled home to their father Jacob in Canaan. They broke the news immediately. Joseph is still alive, and he rules over all of Egypt. Jacob was stunned, his heart stopping in pure disbelief. But as they repeated Joseph's words, and he saw the massive Egyptian wagons sent to transport him. The old man's spirit finally revived. Jacob declared, "It is enough. My son Joseph is alive. I must go and see him before I die." So he packed up everything and set out for Beersheba. There he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That night God spoke to him in a vision, calling out, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," Jacob replied. God answered, "I am the God of your father. Do not fear going down to Egypt, for I will build you into a great nation there. I will go with you, and I will bring your descendants back. When you die, Joseph's own hands will close your eyes." With that, Jacob left Beersheba. Jacob's sons loaded their father, their wives, and their little ones into the royal wagons Pharaoh provided. Carrying all their livestock and the possessions they had gathered in Canaan, they journeyed into Egypt. Every single descendant came with him, his sons, grandsons, daughters, and granddaughters. Together they stepped into a new land, mapping out a destiny that echoes in us to this very day. What happens to our identity when we flee into the dark? These are the names of Israel's sons who entered Egypt: Jacob and his firstborn, Reuben, with Enoch, Phellu, Hezron, and Carmi, and the sons of Simeon: Jemuel, Hamon, Ohed, Jashin, Zohar, and Shaw, born of a Canaanitish woman. Their names echo our own inner divisions. Beside them stood the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, and Judah's sons, Er, Onan, She, Lepores, and Zer. Yet Er and Onan perished in Canaan, casualties of a dry land. The survivors carried on. Pharez bore Hezron and Hamel. Issachar brought Tola, Phuvah-Job, and Shimron, while Zebulun came with Sirid, Elon, and Jaleel. These were the sons Leah bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, along with his daughter Dinah. In total, these sons and daughters numbered 33 souls carrying the weight of a lineage. Then came the sons of Gad, Zephon, Haggi, Shuni, Esben, Ari, Arodi, and Arai. Beside them the children of Asher: Jimnah, Ishwa, Ishu, Bariah, and their sister Sarah, with Bariah's sons Haber and Maltio. These were born of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah. She bore Jacob 16 souls. Then came the lineage of Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin, who would shape history. In the strange land of Egypt, Joseph fathered Manasseh and Ephraim, born to him by Asen, daughter of Putiphah, the priest of Anon. Benjamin's sons also traveled: Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Jerah, Naaman, Ahi, Rash, Mupam, Hupam, and Ard. These 14 souls were born to Rachel and Jacob. Then came the sons of Dan, led by Hushim, and the sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, Guni, Jizer, and Shillem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel. She bore them to Jacob, totaling 7 souls who carried the family's future. In total, 66 direct descendants traveled with Jacob into Egypt, not counting the wives of his sons. With Joseph and his 2 sons already in Egypt, the entire household of Jacob numbered 70 souls. A tiny, vulnerable tribe stepping into the shadow of a vast empire. Jacob sent Judah ahead to guide them toward Joseph in Gan. And so they arrived in the land of Gan. Joseph prepared his chariot and rode to Gan to meet his father Israel. When they finally met, Joseph threw his arms around his father's neck, weeping for a long, silent time. Israel whispered to Joseph, "I am ready to die now, for I have seen your face and know you are alive." Then Joseph turned to his brothers and his father's household. "I will go and tell Pharaoh that my brothers and my father's family who were living in Canaan have finally come to join me. I will explain that you are shepherds, keepers of livestock, and that you have brought all your flocks, herds, and everything you own. When Pharaoh summons you and asks about your occupation, this is what you must say. Tell him your servants have raised livestock from our youth until now, just as our ancestors did before us. Only then will you be allowed to live in Gan, for shepherds are deeply detested by the Egyptians." Joseph went to Pharaoh and announced, "My father and brothers have arrived from Canaan with all their flocks, herds, and possessions, and they are now in Ghan." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them directly to the Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked them, "What is your occupation?" They replied, "Your servants are shepherds, just like our fathers. We have come to live in your land because the famine in Canaan is so severe that there is no pasture left for our animals. So now we beg you, please, let your servants settle in the land of Ghan." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your family has come to you. All of Egypt lies before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Ghan. If any of them are especially capable, put them in charge of my own livestock." Then Joseph brought his father Jacob to stand before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed the king. Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How old are you?" Jacob replied, "The years of my journey on this earth are 130. My days have been few and difficult, and I have not lived as long as my ancestors did during their own travels." Jacob blessed Pharaoh once more and left. Joseph then settled his father and brothers, giving them property in the richest part of Egypt, the region of Ramesses, exactly as Pharaoh ordered. And Joseph provided food for his father, his brothers, and their entire household, meeting each family's needs. But outside, the famine grew desperate. Food vanished completely, leaving both Egypt and Canaan exhausted and broken under the weight of the starvation. Joseph collected all the money in Egypt and Canaan in exchange for grain, bringing this massive wealth directly into Pharaoh's treasury. When the people's money was entirely gone, the Egyptians crowded around Joseph crying, "Give us food! Why should we die right before your eyes? Our money is completely gone." Joseph answered, "If you have no cash left, bring me your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange." So they traded their horses, sheep, goats, herds of cattle and donkeys in exchange for their animals. Joseph kept them supplied with bread throughout that entire difficult year. By the following year, they returned with absolutely nothing left to hide. They cried, "Our money is gone, and you already own our animals. There is nothing left to offer you but our bodies and our empty land. Why should we die before your eyes? Take us and our fields in exchange for grain. We will become Pharaoh's servants. Just give us seed so we can survive and the earth won't turn into a wasteland." So Joseph purchased all of Egypt's land for Pharaoh. The famine was so brutal that every Egyptian sold his field, making Pharaoh the owner of the entire country. Joseph then relocated the surviving population into cities spanning from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the priests kept their land because Pharaoh provided them with a regular food supply, meaning they had no need to sell. Because of this, their lands remained their own. Joseph then addressed the crowds. "Look, I have purchased you and your land for Pharaoh. Take this seed and plant it. When harvest time comes, you must give 1/5 of your crop to Pharaoh. The remaining 4/5 are yours to keep as seed and as food. Use it to feed your households and your children." The people cried out, "You have saved our lives. We are grateful, and we will serve Pharaoh." Joseph established this law across Egypt. 1/5 of all harvest belongs to Pharaoh, except the priests' lands. Meanwhile, the people of Israel settled deeply in the rich district of Ghan. They acquired property there, prospered, and grew rapidly. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, bringing his final age to 147 years. As the time drew near for Israel to face his own mortality, he summoned his beloved son Joseph, whispering, "If I have found favor with you, place your hand under my thigh. Swear that you will show me true kindness. Do not bury me here in Egypt, but carry my body back to rest with my ancestors." Joseph replied, "I will do exactly as you ask." But Jacob insisted, "Swear it to me." And Joseph swore his oath. In response, Israel bowed in worship at the head of his bed. Not long after, a messenger brought Joseph word, "Your father is failing. He immediately took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told that Joseph had arrived, the old man gathered his remaining strength and sat up in bed. Why do we run from the very identity we fought to secure? Jacob near death remembers Luz, the sacred ground where the divine first found him, promising to make his broken life fruitful, to multiply his legacy, turning one man's exile into a vast nation, inheriting a spiritual homeland that no earthly power could ever take away. Now the dying patriarch claims Joseph's sons born in Egypt, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own. They will not be defined by the shadows of Egypt, but will stand beside the eldest brother's heirs to a deeper ancient spiritual promise. Any children born after them will carry their own heritage. But as Jacob speaks, a sudden, heavy memory strikes. He remembers Rachel, his true love, dying by his side on the dusty road from Padan, just miles away from Ephrath, today known as Bethlehem. There on the dusty roadside he buried his beloved, leaving a piece of his soul behind. Squinting through the shadows of age, Israel looks at the boys. "Who are these?" he whispers. Joseph answers, "They are my sons, whom God gave me here in my exile." "Bring them close," the old man requests, "so that I may bless them." His eyes are failing him now, heavily clouded by the years. He pulls the young boys into a warm, desperate embrace, kissing them gently. "I never expected to see your face again," Jacob whispers to his son. "Yet here I hold your children." Joseph steps back, bringing the boys forward, and bows low to the earth in deep reverence. Joseph carefully guides his sons forward. He places the younger Ephraim toward Jacob's left, and the firstborn Manasseh toward Jacob's right, expecting the traditional greater blessing for the eldest. But Israel deliberately crosses his arms. He places his right hand on the younger brother's head and his left on the firstborn, choosing to subvert human expectations with a conscious, unseen design. He begins his blessing, "The God of my fathers, who has guided every step of my journey, the divine presence that rescued me from my own deep darkness, bless these boys. May my name and the legacy of my fathers Abraham and Isaac live through them, multiplying across the earth." But seeing his father's right hand resting on the younger son Joseph feels a surge of deep, quiet frustration. He reaches out, gently lifting his father's hand to move it from the younger brother to the firstborn. "Not this way, my father," Joseph urges. "This is the eldest. Place your right hand upon his head." But the blind patriarch refuses, whispering softly, "I know, my son. I know my son. He will indeed become a great nation and achieve greatness. But his younger brother's destiny will reach even further his descendants, shaping the very future of nations yet unborn." He blesses them, declaring that for generations people will invoke their names as a symbol of ultimate favor, saying, "May God make you like them." And so the younger is set before the elder. "I am dying," Israel whispers to Joseph, "but the divine presence will remain, leading you back to the land of your ancestors. Furthermore, I give you a double portion of land, a territory I personally won from the Amorites through bitter struggle with my own sword and bow." Then Jacob summons all his sons to his bedside. "Gather around," he calls out. "Listen closely, sons of Jacob, and I will reveal the paths your descendants will walk in the days to come. Reuben, you are my firstborn, the very beginning of my strength and pride, yet unstable as turbulent water. You forfeited your rank when you crossed a line and defiled your father's bed. You climbed onto my couch. And as for Simeon and Levi, their weapons are tools of cold violence. I pray my soul never enters their dark, secret councils. I want no part in their violent gatherings. In their blind fury, they slaughtered innocent men, and in their reckless self-will, they tore down strong walls. Cursed be their fierce, cruel, and utterly unrelenting anger. I will scatter their descendants across the promised land. But Judah, your brothers will honor you. You will conquer all your enemies, and your father's children will bow down before your royal strength. Judah is like a young lion. You return from the hunt, my son, and crouch low. Like a fierce beast who dares to disturb him, the royal scepter will never depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff, until the true king finally arrives. To him the nations of the earth will gather in obedience. He ties his young donkey to the finest vine, washing his robes in the abundance of rich wine. His eyes are dark with passion, and his teeth are white with milk. Zebulun will settle by the shores, serving as a safe harbor for many ships. Issachar is like a strong, patient donkey resting quietly between two heavy burdens. He saw that quiet rest was good, and the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to carry heavy loads, choosing hard labor. Dan will judge his own people with justice. Dan will be like a hidden viper beside the road, striking at the horse's heels, sending the rider tumbling backward into the dust. I wait for your deliverance, O Lord. Gad will be attacked by fierce raiders, but he will strike back at their heels. Asher will produce rich food fit for royalty. Naphtali is a free-running deer speaking elegant words. Joseph is a fruitful vine planted by a fresh spring, its strong branches climbing over the stone wall. Though archers fiercely attacked him, shooting at him with bitter, relentless hatred, his bow remained steady and strong. His arms were made powerful by the hands of Jacob's mighty God, the true shepherd and stone of Israel. By the God of your father, who helps you, by the Almighty, who pours down rich blessings from the heavens above. Blessings from the deep waters below, blessings of fertility and new life. Your father's blessings surpass even those of my own ancestors, reaching the utmost heights of the ancient hills. May these rich blessings rest on the head of Joseph the prince, who was set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a fierce wolf, devouring his prey in the morning and dividing the spoil at night. These are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this was their father's final legacy, speaking a unique blessing tailored to the destiny of each son. Then he gave them his final charge. I am about to pass on. Bury me with my ancestors in the cave located in the field of Ephron the Hittite. The cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the land of Canaan. Abraham bought this land from Ephron the Hittite to be our permanent resting place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife, and there they laid Isaac and Rebekah to rest. In that same sacred ground, I buried Leah. The field and the cave were bought from the sons of Heth. When Jacob finished instructing his sons, he pulled his feet back into the bed, took his final breath, and was gathered to his ancestors. Joseph fell upon his father's face, weeping bitterly and kissing him. Joseph then ordered his personal physicians to embalm his father. They spent 40 long days performing the sacred preservation rites, as was the custom for those being prepared for eternity. The entire nation of Egypt mourned him for 70 days. When the long period of sorrow finally came to an end, Joseph pleaded with the royal court, begging them to petition Pharaoh on his behalf. He was bound by a sacred promise, a dying oath forced upon him by his father. The dying man demanded to be laid to rest in his homeland of Canaan, in the tomb he dug himself. Joseph begged to fulfill this duty, promising he would return to Egypt. Pharaoh granted the request, honoring the sacred oath. But as Joseph set out to bury his father, he was accompanied by a massive procession. The high officials, court elders, and nobility of all Egypt. Every member of Joseph's household made the journey along with his brothers and his father's family. Leaving only their children and livestock behind in the land of Ghan, they set out. A massive convoy of chariots and horsemen climbed into the desert, an immense, imposing procession. When they reached the threshing floor of Atad, beyond the Jordan, they wept bitterly. Joseph led a deep, agonizing lament for his father, a grieving that lasted 7 full days. Watching this raw display of grief at Atad, the local Canaanites remarked on how deeply the Egyptians were mourning. That is why they named the place Abel Misraim, just beyond the Jordan. His sons honored his final wishes. They carried him into the land of Canaan, burying him in the cave at the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite near Mamre. With the burial complete, Joseph turned back toward Egypt. His brothers and the entire funeral party made the long journey home beside him. But with their father gone, old guilt resurfaced. The brothers panicked, whispering that Joseph might finally unleash his buried anger and punish them for their ancient betrayal. Driven by fear, they sent a messenger to Joseph claiming their father had left a final command. The message pleaded for him to forgive the cruel sins of his brothers. They begged him to pardon the wrongs of those who served his father's God. When Joseph heard these desperate words, the tragedy of their fear broke him, and he wept. Then his brothers fell down before his face, offering to be his slaves. But Joseph looked at them and said, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended evil against me, but God turned it into good, preserving many lives. So do not worry. I will provide for you and your children." With these gentle words, he healed their broken spirits and put their fears to rest. Joseph stayed in Egypt with his entire family, living to the age of 110. He was blessed to see his son Ephraim's children grow to the third generation. He even lived to cradle Machir's children, the grandsons of Manasseh, upon his own knees. As his end approached, Joseph told his brothers, "I am dying, but God will surely rescue you, leading you back to the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He made them swear an oath, "When God redeems you, carry my bones out of this place." At 110, Joseph died. They embalmed his body and laid him to rest in an Egyptian coffin.